Section 16 of the Epic of Kings, Stories Retold from Firdusi. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Epic of Kings by Firdusi, translated by Helen Zimmern. The Vengeance of Kai Khosrau. Dire was the wailing among the army of Iran at their sword defeat, and they turned them back discomfited. And they came before the Shah, their hearts torn with anguish, and their hands were crossed upon their breasts, and they were humble as slaves. And Kai Khosrau was angry when he beheld them, and he remembered Firud, and he wailed against Tus, from whom was sprung this evil, and he said, "Cursed be he and his elephants and his symbols." And the Shah withdrew from his courts, and he withheld his countenance from the land. So the nobles went out unto Rustem, and entreated of him that he would intercede for them with the Shah. And Rustem did as they desired, and he pleaded for the army and its leaders, and he spake good even of Tus. And Kai Khosrau inclined his ear unto his pevlava, and he let the light of his countenance shine again upon his army, and he confided unto Tus once more the standard of Kawa. But he made Gif march beside him and restrain his haste. So they set forth again unto Tehran, and Afrasiyab, when he learned of their approach, made ready his army also. And there were joined unto him the hosts of the Kakan of China, and the Camus of Kushan, men mighty in the battlefield. And from Ind and all the highlands of Asia there came forth troops unto the aid of Afrasiyab, king of Turan. And he rejoiced thereat, for he was assured that if Rustem came not forth to aid them, the men of Iran could not stand against his host. Now, when the two armies met, many and fierce were the combats waged between them, and blows were given and received, and swords flashed and showers of arrows descended on all sides. And the blood of brave men was shed, like unto the shedding of rain from a black cloud. And day by day were the Iranians weakened, for they were smitten with great slaughter, and the number of their dead was past the counting. But Afrasiyab rejoiced in his victory, and his heart shouted within him, when he learned after many days that the Iranians were drawn back into the mountains. But Kai Khosrau, when he learned it, was afflicted and wept sore. Then he sent greeting unto Rustem his pevlava, and he craved of him that he would come forth to aid the army, for in him alone could he put his trust. And Rustem said, "O Shah, since the day that mine arm could wield a mace, I have ever fought the battles of Iran, and it would seem that rest may never come nigh unto me. Yet since I am thy slave, it behoveth me to obey. I am ready to do thy desires." So he made ready a host to go unto the succor of Iran. And while he did so, the army was defeated yet again, and all heart went from the Iranians, and they would have given them over unto their foes. But while they pondered it, there came tidings unto Gudars that Rustem was drawing nigh. Yet they feared to give way unto belief. But Paran, when he heard it, was sore discomfited, for he remembered of old the might of Rustem, and he knew that none could stand before it. But the Kakan and the Camus scoffed at his fears, and they made loud boastings that Rustem should fall by their hands. Now, when some days had passed in this disquietude, it came about one night that, when the moon showed her face above the mountains, like unto a victorious king seated upon a throne of turquoise, a watchman of Iran set up a great cry, and he said, "The plain is filled with dust, and the night resoundeth with noise, and I behold a mighty army drawing nigh, and they bear torches, and in their midst rideth Rustem the mighty." When the men of Iran heard this, they set up a great shout, and their hearts seemed to come back into their bodies, and their courage, that had been as dead, returned, and glad was the greeting that they gave unto Rustem the pevlava. And Rustem mustered them, and put them into battle order. And when the sun had wearied of the black veil, and had torn the night asunder, and reappeared unto the world, the men of Iran called upon the host of Tehran to come forth in combat. And they defied them unto battle, and they fought with new valor, and they made great havoc in their ranks. And when the evening was come, the day belonged unto Iran. Then Paran called before him Huwan the brave, and said unto him, The nobles of Iran have found again their courage, since an army is come to their aid. Yet I would know if Rustem be their leader, for him alone do I fear. And when they learned it, his spirit was troubled, but the Camus mocked him, and sware a great oath that, ere the sun should have set once more, he would have broken the might of Rustem, for he said, There is none, not even a mad elephant, that is mine equal in the fight. So when the day was come, the Camus challenged Rustem unto single combat, and Rustem strode forth from the camp, and the Camus met him upon the plain. Then they struggled sore and wrestled with one another. But in the end, Rustem caught the Camus in the meshes of his cord, and he showed him unto the army, and he asked of them, saying, What death desire ye, that the Camus should die, for his hour is come? Then he threw him among the nobles, and they made an end of him with their spears, and they flung his body to the vultures. Now, when the Khakan heard of the death of the Camus, he sware that he would avenge him, and he sent forth a messenger to defy Rustem. But Rustem said unto the messenger, I seek no quarrel with the Khakan, and in all your army I desire only to look upon the face of Iran, and I beg of him that he will come forth to greet me, for my heart burneth towards him, because he was afflicted for the death of Siawash, my foster son, and because of the good he did unto Kai Khosrau, and unto his mother. So the messenger bare these words unto Paran, and Paran, when he had taken counsel, listened unto the desires of Rustem, and came into his tents, and he said, I am Paran, leader of the host of Tehran. Speak unto me thy name. And Rustem said, I am Rustem of Zubalistan, and I am armed with a mace and a sword of Kabul. Then he gave him greeting from Kai Khosrau, and he lauded him for the good deeds that he had done unto Siawash and to his son, and he entreated him that he would turn away from Afrasiyab, and go with him unto Kai Khosrau. And he said, Iran desireth not to destroy the innocent, therefore deliver unto me the men upon whose head resteth the blood of Siawash, and we will withdraw our host, and there shall be peace in the land. Then Paran said, That which thou askest, verily it can never be, for the slayers of Siawash are near kinsfolk unto Afrasiyab, and because he hath named me the leader of his host, it may not be that I abandon them. But I say unto thee, that it would be sweeter unto me to die than to conduct this warfare, and that my heart is torn because I must lift up the sword of enmity against Kai Khosrau, my son. And Rustem saw that the words that Paran spake were true, and he sorrowed for him. And when they parted, it was in friendship, although they knew that battle must rage between them. Then they drew up their armies, and for 40 days there was waged a battle mighty and terrible, and great ravages were committed, and Rustem did deeds of valor, and the strong and the weak were alike impotent before him. And the plains were strewn with the bodies of the slain, until that an ant could not have found a road to pass between them. And the blood of the wounded streamed on all sides, and heads without bodies, and bodies without heads covered the ground. For neither the claw of the leopard, nor the trunk of the elephant, neither the high mountains nor the waters of the earth could prevail against Rustem when he fought at the head of his hosts. And he slew the mightiest among the Turanians, and only Paran was he mindful to spare. And the Khakan of China was enmeshed in his cord, and he sent him bound unto Kai Khosrau with news of the victory. And when the Turanians fled before his face, he followed after them and pursued them unto the mountains. Then Persian made haste to come before Afrasiyab, and he spake to him and said, The land is changed into a sea of blood, for Rustem is come forth, and who can stand against him? And he followed after me close, wherefore I counsel thee, flee, for how canst thou stand alone against him? Alas for the woe that thou hast brought upon Turan. Thou hast wounded our hearts with the iron of the arrow, wherewith thou didst slay Siawash the noble. Then he urged upon him that he tarry not. So Afrasiyab fled from before the face of Rustem, and hid himself in the mountains. And when Rustem came into his courts and found that the king was fled, he seized upon much booty, and divided it among his men. And he feasted them many days in the house of Afrasiyab, and he suffered them to enjoy repose. Then he destroyed with fire the palace, and when he had done so, he turned him to go back unto Kai Khosrau. Now when he was come within the city of the Shah, glad cries rang through all the air, and the sound of drums filled the land of Iran, and there was joy throughout its breadth, because the destroyer of Turan was returned. And the heart of Kai Khosrau rejoiced like a paradise, and he came out to meet his Peplava, mounted upon an elephant gaily caparisoned, and music and singers went before him. And he invited him to a great feast, and he poured rich gifts upon him. And for a month Rustem abode in the presence of his Shah, making merry with wine, and the singers chanted of his great deeds, and the sounds of flutes and stringed instruments went with their words. But when that time was over, Rustem asked of Kai Khosrau that he would suffer him to return unto Zal his father, for his heart yearned to look upon his face, and Kai Khosrau suffered it. Now Rustem was not returned long unto Zabulistan, before there came into the courts of the Shah a shepherd who desired to speak with Kai Khosrau, and the Shah granted his request, and the man opened his mouth before him, and he said, A wild ass is broken in among my horses, and he doeth great mischief, for his breath is like unto a lion. Send forth, therefore, I entreat of thee, O King of kings, a warrior of thine host, that he may slay him. Now Kai Khosrau, when he had listened, knew that this was not a wild ass, but the Death Akwan, who had taken this disguise upon him. So he cast about whom he should send forth to meet him, and he knew there was none other but Rustem, the son of Zal, to whom he could turn in this strait. So he sent a messenger swift as a cloud before a storm, to summon him forth yet again. And Rustem obeyed the voice of his Shah, and he set forth in search of the Diev, and he was mounted upon Rakush, his steed. And in his hand was a mighty mace, and round his wrist was rolled a cord of length. And he went in search of the wild ass. And when he had found him, he threw his cord about him. But the ass vanished under his hands. Then Rustem knew that it was a Diev, and that he fought against the arts of magic. Yet was he not dismayed. And after a while the ass came forth again, and Rustem threw his cord once more about him. And yet again the Diev vanished under his hand. And thus did the Diev 3 days and 3 nights without ceasing, so that weariness came upon Rustem, and he was heavy with slumber. So he sought out a spot of safety, and he laid him down to rest, and he bade Rakush browse beside him. Now, when the Diev saw that Rustem was sleeping, he drew nigh and loosened the earth whereon he lay, and lifted it, and placed it upon his head, that he might cast it away and destroy Rustem. But as he carried him, Rustem awoke, and when he saw what was come to pass, he feared that his hour was come. And the Diev, when he beheld that Rustem was awakened, spake and said unto him, O hero, which death dost thou covet? Shall I fling thee down upon the mountain, or cast thee into the sea? Now Rustem knew that the Diev questioned him in wile, and he bethought him that he would of a surety do that which Rustem desired not. So he said, I have heard it said that it is not given to those that perish in the waters to look upon the face of the Siraj, or to find rest in the life that is beyond. Then the Diev said, I desire that thou know not repose. And he flung him into the sea at a spot where hungry crocodiles would devour him. Now Rustem, when he felt the water beneath him, forthwith drew out his sword and combated the crocodiles with his right hand, and with his left he swam towards the shore. And long did he struggle and soar, but when the night was fallen he put his foot upon the dry land. Then, when he had given thanks unto God and rested him, he returned unto the spot where he had found the Diev, and he sought after Rakush's steed, and his eye beheld him not. Then fear filled his spirit, and he roamed around to seek him, and he found him at last among the horses of Afrasiyab, that grazed in a spot hard by, but the keepers had ensnared him. But when Rakush heard the voice of Rustem, he neighed aloud, and brake from the keepers and ran towards his master. And Rustem put the saddle upon him and mounted him. Then he slew the keepers and took their herds unto himself. Now while he was so doing, Afrasiyab came forth from his hiding place, for his heart yearned to look upon his horses. And when he beheld Rustem in their midst, he was dismayed, and knew not whither he should turn. For he deemed that Pehlavah had discovered his hiding place, and was come forth against him. So he offered battle unto him with the men that were with him, and Rustem accepted the challenge, although he was alone. And he fought with might and overcame the men, and slew 60 of them with his sword and 40 with his mace. And Afrasiyab fled once more from before him. Now when it was done, the Diev came forth again, for he thought he could quell Rustem now, that he was weary. But Rustem sprang on him and crushed him, and he was slain at his hands. Then the Pehlavah returned unto Kai Khosrau, and when the Shah had learned of all his deeds, and beheld the booty that he had brought back, his mouth could not cease from praising the prowess of Rustem, and he would have kept his Pehlavah beside him forever. But Rustem said, Suffer thy servant to go forth, for I would make ready a host, since it behoveth us not to cease from the vengeance that is due unto Siawash, for his murderers yet cumbered the ground. Wherefore Rustem departed yet again from out the courts of the Shah. End of section 16. Section 17 of the Epic of Kings. Stories retold from Firdusi. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Epic of Kings by Firdusi, translated by Helen Zimmern. Byzun and Manijeh. Peace reigned again within the borders of Iran, and the sword slept in its scabbard, and Kai Khosrau ordered the world with wisdom. And men rejoiced that the glory of Turan had been brought low, and the Shah feasted his nobles in lightness of heart. Now it came about one day that while they were shortening the hours with wine, there entered in unto them the keeper of the curtains of the door. And he said that men from Arman stood without it and craved an audience. Then Kai Khosrau bade that they be let in. So the men came before them, and they uttered cries of lamentation, and they fell down at his feet and implored his aid. And Kai Khosrau said, Who hath done you wrong? Then the man answered, Our wrong cometh unto us from the borders of Turan. For there issue forth thence wild boars, that break into our fields and do destruction to our crops. And our fortunes are entwined with the ground, and no man can overcome these beasts. Wherefore, we pray thee, send forth a Pehlavah, that he may subdue them, for our land groaneth under this plague. Then Kai Khosrau said, It shall be done as you desire, and he dismissed them graciously. Then he called before him his treasurer, and bade him bring forth precious stones, and horses with girdles of gold, and rich brocades of room. And when they were placed before him, he showed them to his nobles. And he said that whoever would go forth to combat the wild boars should not find him close-handed. But for a while none answered, for no man listed to go forth to battle with wild beasts. Then Byzun, the son of Give, arose and spake, saying, If the Shah will grant leave unto me, I will go forth and slay these foes. Now Give was grieved thereat, because that Byzun was his only son, and he feared for his youth. Therefore he sought to restrain him. But Byzun suffered it not, and he said, O king, listen unto my desires, for though I be young in years, yet am I old in prudence, and I will do naught that is not fitting unto thy slave. And Kai Khosrau granted his request, but he bade him take forth with him Gurjin, the wise in counsel, that he should guide him aright. And Byzun did as the Shah desired, and they set forth unto the land of Arman. Now they were come unto the wood, they rested them, and made a great fire, and drank wine until they were refreshed. Then Gurjin would have laid him down to slumber, but Byzun said, Not so, let us go forth and seek the wild boars. And Gurjin said, Go thou alone, for it is thou who hast engaged in this combat, and who hast taken to thyself the gifts of the Shah. Therefore it behoveth me only to look on. When Byzun heard these words, he was amazed, but he regarded them not. And he entered in upon the forest, and after a while he came upon the wild boars, and they fell upon him. But he slew them with his mace, and he reddened the ground with their gore, and he went after them, even unto their lairs, and not one of them did he suffer to escape. Then when he had done thus, he parted their mighty teeth from off their heads, and hung them about his saddle, that the men of Iran might behold them. And after this he turned his back unto Gurjin. Now Gurjin, when he beheld him mounted upon his horse, and bearing round his saddle the tokens of his triumph, was envious thereat, and with his mouth he gave him joy. But Ahriman took hold of his spirit, so he pondered all night long how he would lay a snare for Byzun. And when the morning was come, he praised his prowess, and they quaffed wine together, and fair words were exchanged between them. Then Gurjin said, This land is known unto me, for I sojourned here with Rustem, and I know that at the distance of 2 farsangs lies the garden of Afrasiyab, where his women go forth to keep the feast of spring. And I bethink me that the time is at hand. Wherefore I say unto thee, Let us go hence, and behold with our eyes the fair ones, whom the king of Turan hideth behind his curtains. Now these words inflamed the blood of Byzun, and he gave ear unto Gurjin, for he was young, and he acted like a young man. So they set forth upon the road, and Gurjin filled the mind of Byzun with feasts and with sounds of music. And when they were come unto the spot, Byzun burned with impatience to look upon the woman of Afrasiyab. And Gurjin feigned as though he would restrain his foot within the skirt of patience, but he rejoiced in secret, for he hoped that from this deed evil would arise. So Byzun sped forth unto the garden, and he hid himself beneath the shade of a tall cypress, and he feasted his eyes upon the beauty of the women. And the garden was clad in its robes of spring, and the world was green and fair, and all the air was filled with the sweet sounds of music and of song. And there moved amid the rose bushes maidens of peri face, and in stature they were like to the cypress trees, and one was exalted above them all, and she was daughter unto Afrasiyab, and Manijeh was she named. Now it came about that as Manijeh stood at the door of her tent, she beheld Byzun where he was hid, and she marveled at his beauty, and her heart was captive unto him. So she called about her maidens, and said, Go forth and question the stranger who regardeth us, for I bethink me that he is a peri, or that Siawash is come back unto the earth. For no mortal can own such beauty, neither can any man enter here. Then one went forth and bare unto Byzun this message, and his heart leaped thereat, And he said, Say unto your mistress that I am come forth from Iran to slay the wild boars of Arman. And I came hither that perchance I might gaze upon the face of the daughter of Afrasiyab, for tidings of her beauty were told unto me, and reached even unto Iran. Go therefore and ask if I may speak with her. Then the handmaidens did as Byzun desired, and Manijeh said, Let him come forth. So Byzun entered into the tents of Manijeh, and she received him with joy, and she caused his feet to be washed with musk and amber, and she poured jewels before him, and prepared for him a feast of sweetmeats. And slaves stood around and made soft music, and the heart of Byzun was ensnared in the meshes of the net that had been spread. And 3 days and 3 nights did he sojourn beside Manijeh, and his passion for her waxed greater. And he thought not of Iran, neither of the time of departure. And Manijeh too rejoiced in his presence. And when the time was come for her to quit the garden of spring, she would not part with him. So she gave unto him a cup wherein she had mingled a potion, and the wine caused Byzun to sleep. And while he slept, the maidens bare him in a litter even into the house of Afrasiyab. And Manijeh hid him behind the curtains of the women, and none, save only her handmaidens, were aware of his presence. Now when Byzun awoke, he asked whither he was come, and when he learned that he was in the house of Afrasiyab, he was afraid, and desired to return unto Iran. But Manijeh quieted his distrust, and he forgot his fears in her love. And she made the earth glad about him, and the hours fled on the wings of wine and of joy. And many days sped thus, and none knew what passed in the house of the women. Then it came about that a guardian of the door learned thereof, and he came before Afrasiyab, and told unto him that his daughter hid within her house a man of the race of Iran. And Afrasiyab, when he learned it, was beside himself with anger, and he cursed Manijeh, and he said, The hour is come unto this man. Then he called for Jerisvaz, his brother, and bade him go forth with a band of armed men unto the house of the women. And Jerisvaz did as Afrasiyab commanded, and he put guards at all the doors. Then the sounds of lutes and of rejoicing fell upon his ear, for none were aware of the vengeance that was come upon them. And when Jerisvaz was come unto the house of Manijeh, the daughter of Afrasiyab, he brake open the door and stood in the midst of the revels. And he beheld within the chamber many slaves playing on lutes of gold, and fair women that handed the wine cups. And Manijeh was seated upon a throne of gold, and beside her was Byzun, the son of Giv, the Iranian, and joy was painted on his visage. Now, when Jerisvaz beheld Byzun, he cried, O vile man, thou art fallen into my hands. How wilt thou now save thy life? And Byzun was dismayed, for he had neither sword nor armor, and he thought within himself, I fear me that my life will end this day. But he drew forth from his boot a dagger that was hidden therein, and he threatened Jerisvaz, and he said that he would plunge it into his breast if he was led not before Afrasiyab. Now Jerisvaz knew that Byzun was quick to act, and would do that which he spake. So he held back from combat, and he seized Byzun and bound him, and led him before Afrasiyab. And when Afrasiyab saw him in such plight, he said, O man of evil, wherefore didst thou come into my land? Then Byzun told him how he had gone forth to slay the boars, and how he had come into the garden of Afrasiyab. And he said that a peri had borne him unto the palace, for he would not do hurt unto Manijeh. But Afrasiyab refused belief unto his words, and he commanded that a gibbet should be raised without his court, and the Byzun be hung thereon, because he had dishonored the house of the women, and had stolen like a thief in the night into the house of the king. And in vain did Byzun invoke mercy at the hands of Afrasiyab, and he was led forth beyond the courts. And the men of Afrasiyab made ready the gallows, and Byzun stood bound beneath. And he wept sore in his distress, and he prayed to the winds that they would bear tidings of him unto the Shah of Iran, and he swore that his death should be avenged upon Turan. Now while he waited thus, there passed by Paran, the Pahlava, who was come forth to do homage unto the king. And when he beheld the gibbet, he questioned concerning it. And when he learned that it was for Byzun, he was troubled. So he got him from his horse and came near unto the youth, and questioned him of his adventure. And Byzun told him all that was come about, and how his evil comrade had laid him for a snare. Then Paran commanded that punishment be stayed until he should have spoken unto Afrasiyab. And he went in and spoke before the king as a suppliant. Then Afrasiyab bade him make known his desires, and Paran opened his mouth, and spake words of wisdom unto Afrasiyab his king. And he reminded him of the death of Siawash, and how Byzun was of much account in his own country, and how surely his blood would be avenged. And he said how the land of Turan was not ready to stand again in a new war. And he prayed Afrasiyab to content him with the dungeon. And he said, Heap chains upon Byzun, and let the earth hide him, that Iran may not know whither he is vanished. Now Afrasiyab knew that the words of Paran were wise, and he gave ear unto them. So Byzun was led forth unto a desert place, and he was laden with chains of iron, and his tender flesh was bound, and he was thrown into a deep hole. And the opening thereof was closed with the mighty stone that the Death of Aquan had torn from the nethermost sea, and neither sun nor moon could be seen by Byzun. And Afrasiyab trusted that his reason would forsake him in this pit. And when he had done thus unto Byzun, he bade Jerisphaz go in unto the house of the daughter that had dishonored him, and tear off her costly robes and her crown, and her veil. And he said, Let her be cast forth also into the desert, that she may behold the dungeon where Byzun is hid. And say unto her, Thou hast been his spring, be now his comforter, and wait upon him in his narrow prison. And Jerisphaz did as Afrasiyab commanded, and he tore the veil from off Manijeh, and he caused her to walk barefooted unto the spot where Byzun was hid. Now Manijeh was bowed down with sorrow, and she wept sore, and she wandered through the desert day and night, bewailing her fate. And ever did she return unto the pit, and she sought how she might enter therein. But she could not move the mighty stone that closed its mouth. Yet after some days were gone by, she found an opening where she could thrust in her hand. Now when she had found it, she rejoiced, and daily she went forth unto the city, and begged of men that they would give her bread. And none knew her for the daughter of Afrasiyab, but all had pity upon her sorry plight. And they gave her freely of that which they had. And she returned with it unto Byzun, and she fed him through the hole that she had made. And she spake unto him sweet words of comfort, and she kept his heart alive within him. Now, while these things were passing in Turan, Gurjin was returned unto Iran much discomfited, and he pondered how he should come before the Shah, and what he should say unto give. And he told them that they had of their combined strength overcome the Boers, and he boasted that he had done deeds of great prowess. And he said that a wild ass was come forth out of the forest, and had borne away Byzun from before his eyes, and verily he held that it must be a Deav. Then Kai Khosrau questioned him closely, and when he had done so, he saw that Gurjin held not unto his story. So his mind misgave him, and he commanded Gurjin be put in chains, and he said, I will guard thee until I have learned tidings of Byzun. Now Give was beside him with grief because of his only son, whom he loved, but Kai Khosrau spake comfort unto his soul. And he bade riders go forth unto all corners of the wind to seek tidings of Byzun, and he said, If I learn naught concerning him until the feast of Nowruz be come, I will search for him in the crystal globe wherein I can behold the world, and read the secrets of destiny. Now when the horsemen had sought Byzun in vain throughout the plains of Iran, and in the gorges of the land of Arman, they returned them unto the courts of the Shah. So when the feast of Nowruz was come, Kai Khosrau clothed himself in a robe of room, and he took from off his head the crown of the Kayanides, and he presented himself in humility before Ormuzd. Then he took in his hand the globe of crystal, and he prayed to God that he would grant unto him to behold the 7 zones of the world. And God granted it, and Kai Khosrau surveyed all the lands of the earth, and nowhere upon them could he behold Byzun. And he was downcast and sad in his spirit, for he deemed that Byzun was departed from the world. Then Ormuzd showed unto him where he was hidden in a pit, and Kai Khosrau beheld him, and the damsel that watched beside him. So he called before him Give, and said, Let thy heart cease from sorrow, for thy son liveth, and he is tended by a maiden of noble birth. But he is bound, and a mighty stone is laid above his prison, and Rustem alone can deliver him. Wherefore I counsel thee, speed forth unto Zabulistan, and entreat the son of Zal, that he come unto our aid yet again. Then Kai Khosrau wrote a letter unto Rustem, wherein he told him all that was come about, and he gave the writing unto Give, and Give sped forth therewith unto Zabulistan. Now when he was come within the courts of Rustem, Zal beheld him from afar, and he feared that evil was come upon Iran, since the Shah sent forth a man of might, like unto Give, to be his messenger. So he came forth in haste and questioned him. And when he learned his mission, he bade him come within, and he told him how Rustem was gone forth to chase the wild ass, and he made a feast for him, and entertained him until his son was returned within the courts. Now when Rustem learned the tidings, his eyes were filled with tears, but he spake comfort unto Give, and he said, Be not disquieted, for verily Rustem should not remove the saddle from Rakush until he hath grasped the hand of Byzun, and broken his chains and his prison. And when he had read the letter of the Shah, he made him ready to go before Kai Khosrau. And when he was come into his presence, he did obeisance before him, and he said, O King of kings, I am ready to do thy commandments. For my mother brought me into the world that I might weary myself for thee, and unto thee pertaineth rest and joy, and unto me combat everlasting. Then he chose forth from among the warriors men of renown, that they should go out with him to deliver Byzun. And Gurjin sent greeting unto Rustem, and craved of him that he should plead for him with the Shah. And he bewailed his fault, and he entreated that he might go out to succor Byzun. And Rustem asked his forgiveness of Kai Khosrau, and when the Shah would have refused his suit, he pressed him hard. So Kai Khosrau listened to the desires of his Pehlavah. Then he said unto him, Tell me what men and treasures thou desirest to bear with thee into Turan. And Rustem said, I desire not a large army, for I think to regain Byzun by the arts of wile. Give unto me, therefore, jewels and rich brocades and carpets and stuffs of value, for I propose to go forth in the garb of a merchant. Then Kai Khosrau gave him the key to all his treasures, and Rustem chose forth rich stuffs, and loaded them upon 100 camels. And he desired 7 valiant knights, that they should go forth with him clad in the dress of merchants, and that an army be posted in secret upon the borders. And when all was ready, the caravan went forth, and they journeyed until they came into the town of Khotan, and all the people came forth to gaze upon their merchandise. Then Rustem in his disguise went unto the house of Paran, and he poured gifts before him, and he asked leave of him that he might remain within the borders to sell his wares. And Paran granted his request. So Rustem took for himself a house, and showed his goods unto the people, and bartered them. And it was noised through all the land that a caravan was come out from Iran, and all who had need of aught flocked into the city. And the news spread even unto the ears of Manijeh. And when she learned that it was men of Iran who were come forth, She made her way unto the city and came before Rustem and questioned him, saying, "What news is there abroad in Iran concerning Byzun, the son of Give? And doth no army come forth to save him? O noble merchant, I entreat of thee, when thou goest back to thy land, to seek out Give and Kai Khosrau and Rustem the mighty, and bring unto them tidings of Byzun, lest he perish in his chains." Now Rustem, when he heard her words, was afraid for his secret, for he knew not who she was. Wherefore he spoke roughly unto her, and he said, "I am a man of peace, and of ignoble birth, a merchant, and I know naught of Give, or of Byzun, or of the Shah. Go thee hence, maiden, thou dost but hinder my business, and this alone concerneth me." When he had thus spoken, Manijeh looked on him with sorrow and wept, saying, "Do the men of Iran refuse tidings unto the poor?" Then Rustem repented of his harshness and said, "Woman, who art thou, and how do these things regard thee?" And he caused food to be put before her, and he comforted her with kind words. Then Manijeh said, "I am daughter unto Afrasiyab, and my father hath cast me forth because of Byzun." And she told him all that was come about, and how she had tended her beloved, and how she had kept him alive. And she related unto Rustem how he languished in his chains, and how they put their trust alone in Rustem the Pehlavah. And she said, "When it was told unto me that men from Iran were come forth, I sped hither unto thee, for I hoped that tidings of Byzun might come thus unto the mighty warrior." When Rustem heard her words, he was moved with compassion, and when he had spoken softly unto her, he gave to her savory meats, and he bade them unto Byzun. Now within the body of a fowl he had hidden a ring whereon was graven his seal, and when Byzun came upon it and felt the ring, and that it bare the name of Rustem, his heart laughed within him, for he knew that the end of his ills was come, and his lips laughed also, and his laughter shook the walls of the pit. Now when Manijeh heard his laughter, she was amazed, and she feared lest his wits were distraught. And she leaned over the mouth of the pit, and she spake, saying, "O man of ill fortune, wherefore is thy heart thus light, thou who seest neither sun nor moon nor stars?" Then Byzun answered and said, "Hope is sprung up in my breast." And Manijeh said, "Whence dost thou behold rays of hope?" And Byzun answered, "I not know whether I can confide it unto thee, for a woman cannot keep a secret." Now Manijeh was pained at these words, and she upbraided Byzun, and recalled to him all she had suffered for his sake. And Byzun repented him of his hasty speech, for he knew that she was prudent and strong of spirit. So he said, "Swear unto me a great oath, and I will tell it unto thee." And Manijeh sware. Then Byzun said, "I know that the merchant who is come forth from Iran is come out because of me. Go therefore again into his presence, and say unto him, O Pehlavah, the king of kings, tell unto me, art thou the master of Rakush?" Now Manijeh, when she had heard these words, sped forth to do the bidding of Byzun, and she came before Rustem and spake to him the words that had been told her. And he answered and said, "Go say unto thy friend, verily I am the master of Rakush, and that I am come forth to deliver him." Then he bade her gather together wood into a pyre, and set light thereto when the night should be come, that he might know where Byzun was laid. And Manijeh did as Rustem commanded, and she wearied not to scour the land, and she stripped the trees of their branches, and her tender body was torn of thorns, but she bare all gladly for the sake of Byzun, whom she loved. And when the night was fallen, she set light unto the wood, and Rustem came forth unto the spot, and his 7 comrades came with him, and each strove in turn to lift the stone that closed the pit, but none could roll it aside. Then Rustem prayed to God that he would grant him strength, and he came unto the mouth of the pit, and he bent down his body, and he spake unto Byzun, and questioned him how he was come into these straits. Then he said, I would ask of thee a boon. Grant thy forgiveness unto Persian, if it be given unto me to move this stone and to free thee from out of this pit. For verily he repenteth him of his evil deed, and because he is valiant, I would that there should be peace between you. But Byzun said, Thou knowest not all the evil that Persian hath brought upon me. I cannot give ear unto thy request, for I desire to take vengeance upon him. Then Rustem said, If thy mind be thus evil that thou wilt not listen to my desires, nor remember how I have come forth in friendship to succor thee, I shall mount upon Rakush and leave thee to perish in thy chains. When Byzun heard these words, he gave a loud cry and bewailed his evil plight, and he said, Be it as thou desirest. Then Rustem laid hold of the stone, and he put forth all his strength, and he lifted it from off the mouth of the pit, and threw it far into the desert. Then he let down his cord, and enmeshed Byzun therein, and drew him forth from his dungeon. And he was a sorry sight to see, for the earth had withered his body, and his skin hung about his bones. Now Rustem, when he had broken the chains of Byzun, covered him with a cloak and set him upon a horse. And he took Manijeh also, and led them unto his house in the city. Then when he had refreshed them with water and covered them with new robes, he desired that they be led unto the spot where the army was hidden. And he said unto Byzun, I desire to fall upon Turan, but thou art too wasted to fight. But Byzun said, Not so. Let Manijeh go forth into shelter, but it behoveth not a man to be guarded like a woman. And he refused ear to the desires of Rustem, and he clad him in a coat of mail, and he girded him to ride beside the pavlova. And they went forth in the darkness until they were come unto the house of Afrasiyab. And when they were come there, Rustem lifted the doors from off their hinges, and entered into the precincts. And he slew the guards that kept the curtains, and he made him a passage unto the chamber of Afrasiyab. And when he stood therein, he lifted up his voice of thunder, and he cried, Sleep, man of folly, and may thy slumbers be deep. Thou hast rested upon thy throne while Byzun was hidden in a pit. But thou hast forgotten that a road leadeth from Iran into Turan, and thou didst think in thine evil heart that none would come forth to avenge him. Listen, therefore, unto my voice, for I am Rustem, the son of Zal, the pavlova, and I have broken down thy doors and released Byzun from his chains, and I am come to do vengeance upon thee. When Afrasiyab heard these words, he awoke and cried out in his fear, and he called upon the names of his guards. But no man came forth, because they had been laid low by the hands of Rustem. Then Afrasiyab made his way unto the door, and because it was dark, he escaped thence. And he fled before the face of Rustem, and left his house between his hands. Then Rustem took much rich booty of slaves and horses and jewels, and when he had done so, he sped back unto his army. For he knew that with the day Afrasiyab would come forth with a host to assail him. And it came about as he foresaw. And when the day was risen, the watchers cried out that an army marched forth from Turan. Then Rustem set his men in battle order, and he sent Manijeh and the slaves and the booty into Iran, and he placed himself at the head of the host, and Byzun rode beside him. And there was fought a mighty battle, and great was the slaughter, and the bodies of the slain and the broken armor covered the earth, and the banner of Turan sank, and Afrasiyab fled before his enemies. Then Rustem returned with joy unto Kai Khosrau, and the Shah was glad also. And he came forth to greet his pavlova, and there rode with him Give and Gudars his warriors. And when Kai Khosrau saw Rustem, he embraced him and said, O stay of my soul, and man of valor, thou resemblest the sun, for wheresoever men may look, they behold the traces of thy mighty deeds. Happy is Zal, who owneth the sun such as thou. Then he blessed him, and showered rich gifts upon him, and Give blessed him also, and Gudars, because he had brought back Byzun into their midst. Then Kai Khosrau gave orders that a great feast be prepared, and the heroes drank until their heads were heavy with wine. But in the morning Rustem came before the Shah in audience, and opened his mouth and said, "May it please the king to lend his ear unto his slave. I desire to return unto Zal, my father." And Kai Khosrau listened to the just desires of Rustem, though he would fain have kept him in his courts. Now when Rustem was departed, Kai Khosrau called before him Byzun, and he spake to him of that which was come about, and he poured pity upon the daughter of Afrasiyab, when he learned all she had suffered for the sake of Byzun. And he gave him rich gifts, and bade him bear them unto her. And he said, "Cherish this woman in thy bosom, and suffer not that grief to come nigh unto her. Neither speak to her cold words, for she hath endured much for thee, and may thy life beside her be happy." And when the Shah had thus spoken, he dismissed Byzun from his presence. Thus endeth the history of Byzun and Manijeh. End of section 17.
Section 18 of the Epic of Kings, stories retold from Firdusi. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Epic of Kings by Firdusi, translated by Helen Zimmern. The Defeat of Afrasiyab. Mourning and sorrow filled the heart of Afrasiyab because of his defeat, and he pondered in his spirit how the fortunes of Iran might be retrieved. So he sent messengers unto all his vassals that they should unsheathe the sword of strife and make ready an army. And the nobles did as Afrasiyab bade them, and they got together an host that covered the ground, and sent it forth before the king. And the king placed Shideh, his son, at the head thereof. And he said unto him, "Upon not the door of peace, neither treat Kai Khosrau other than as an enemy." And when the Shah heard tidings of the army that Afrasiyab had made ready against him, he commanded that no man who could use the bridle and the stirrup should stay within the borders of Iran. And when the army was ready, he placed at its head Gudaz the wise. But Kai Khosrau bade yet again that Gudaz should seek to win Piran and Pelivor unto Iran ere the hosts met in battle. For the Shah remembered the benefits he had received at his hands, and it grieved him sore to go out against him in enmity. And Gudaz did as the Shah desired, and when he had crossed the Jihun, he sent Give, his son, unto Piran, that he might speak with him. But Piran shut ear unto the voice of Give, and he said that he had led forth his army to battle, and that it behoved him to do that which was commanded of Afrasiyab. So the two armies were drawn up in order of battle, and each desired that the other should fall upon them the first. And for 3 days and 3 nights they faced each other, and you would have said that no man so much as moved his lips. And Gudaz was posted before his men, and day and night he searched the stars and the sun and moon for augury, and he demanded of them whether he should advance or whether he should stay. And Piran also waited that he might behold what the Iranians would do. But Byzun was angry thereat, and he went before his father and entreated him to urge his grandsire unto action. For surely, he said, Gudaz hath lost his wits that he thus regardeth the sun and stars, and thinketh not of the enemy. And Give strove in vain to quiet him. And in the ranks of Turan also Human grew impatient, and he asked permission of his brother to challenge the nobles of Iran to single fight. And Piran sought to dissuade him in vain. So he got ready his steed of battle, and rode until he came within the lines of Iran. And when he was come thither, he sought out Rehum, the son of Gudaz, and challenged him to measure his strength. But Rehum said, "My soul thirsteth after the combat, yet since my father hath commanded that the army advance not, it beseemeth me not to forget his behests. And remember, O valiant Turk, that he who ventureth first upon the battlefield hath no need to seek the pathway to return." Then Human said, "Men had told unto me that Rehum was a knight of courage, but now I know that he is afraid." And he turned away his steed, and rode until he came nigh unto Freeboars. And he challenged him also in words of pride, and he said, "Thou art brother unto Sirewash. Show now if there live within thee aught of valour." But Freeboars answered, "Go forth before Gudaz, and demand of him that I may fight, and verily if he listen unto thy voice, it will be a joy unto my soul." Then Human said, "I see that thou art a hero only in words." And he turned his back upon him also, and he rode till he came before Gudaz the Pelivore. And he raised his voice and spake unto him words of insolence, and he defied him to lead forth his army. But Gudaz would not listen unto his voice. Then Human turned him back unto the camp of Turan. And he said unto the army how that the men of Iran were craven. And when the army heard it, they raised shouts of great joy. Now the shouting of the men of Turan pierced even unto the ears of the Iranians, and they were sore hurt to read. And the nobles came before Gudaz, and laid before him their complaints, and they entreated of him that he would lead them forth, that they might prove their valour. And Byzun, when he heard what had been done, came before his grandsire like to a lion in his fury, and he craved that he would grant unto him that he might reply unto the challenge of Human. Now when Gudaz beheld that all the nobles were against him, he listened unto the ardour of Byzun, and he gave to him leave to go forth, and he accorded to him the armour of Siawash, and he blessed him, and bade him be victorious. Then Byzun sent a messenger unto Human, and the place of combat was chosen. And when the sun was risen, they met upon the field, and Human cried unto his adversary, and he said, O Byzun, thine hour is come, for I will send thee back unto Give in such a guise that his heart shall be torn with anguish. But Byzun answered and said, Why waste we our time in words? Let us fall upon one another. Then they did as Byzun desired, and they fought with swords and with arrows, with maces also, and with fists, and sore was the struggle and weary, and the victory leaned unto neither side. And they strove thus from the time of dawn until the sun had lengthened the shadows, and Byzun was afraid lest the day should end in doubt. Then he sent up a prayer unto Ormuzd that he would lend unto him strength. And Ormuzd listened unto the petition of his servant. Then Byzun caught Human in his arms and flung him upon the ground, and he beat out his brains, and he severed his head from off his trunk, that the murder of Siawash might be avenged. Then he gave thanks unto God, and turned him back unto the camp, and he bore aloft the head of Human, and the army of Iran, when they beheld it, set up a great shout. But from the ranks of Turan there came the noise of wailing, and Piran was bowed down with grief and anger, and he commanded the army should go forth and fall upon the Iranians. Now there was fought a battle such as men have not seen the like, and the earth was covered with steel, and arrows fell from the clouds like hail, and the ground was torn with hoofs, and blood flowed like water upon the plains, and the dead lay around in masses, and the feet of the horses could not stir because of them. Then the chiefs of the army said among themselves, If we part not these heroes upon the field of vengeance, there will remain naught when the night is come, save only the earth that turns, and God, the master of the world. Yet they withdrew not from the combat until the darkness had thrown a mantle over the earth, and they could no longer look upon their foes. Now when the earth was become like unto ebony, the leaders of the hosts met in conference. And it was decided between them that they should choose forth valiant men from their midst, and that on the morrow the fate of the land should be decided by them, for they grieved for the blood that had been spilled, and they desired that the hand of destruction be stayed. So when the morning was come, they chose forth their champions, and 10 men of valour were picked from each host, and Piran and Gudaz led them out unto the plain. Now on each side of the plain uprose a mountain. So Gudaz said unto his comrades, Whosoever among you hath laid low his adversary, let him mount this hill and plant the flag that he hath won upon its crest, that the army may learn whom we have vanquished. And Piran spake unto his men in like manner. Then the 10 drew up and faced one another, and each man stood opposed to the adversary that he had chosen. Now Freebors was the first to begin combat, and he was opposed unto Kelbud, the kinsman of Piran, and he rode at him with fury, and he laid him low with his bow, and he galloped with joy into the mountains, and planted the standard of Kelbud upon its crest. Then when it was done, Gif came forward to meet his adversary, and he was placed over against Zaray, the man who Kai Khosrau hated because he had severed the head of Siawash from its trunk. And Gif was careful not to slay him, but he threw his cord about him, and caught him in the snares, and bound him. Then he took from him his standard, and led him bound unto the mountain. And there followed after him Gurazeh, and he too laid low his foe, and planted his flag upon the crest of the hill, and likewise did all the champions of Iran. And when the 9th hour was ended, there waved 10 standards from off the hill, and none remained to fight save only Piran and Gudaz the aged. Then Gudaz girded him for the combat, and for a mighty space they wrestled sore, but in the end Gudaz laid low the power of Piran. And now the Iranians beheld the standard of Piran planted aloft amid those of his champions. They were beside themselves for joy, and they called down the blessings of heaven upon the night. Then a messenger was sent to bear the tidings unto Kai Khosrau, and he took with him Zaray, that the Shah might with his own hand sever that vile head from off its trunk. And Kai Khosrau rejoiced at the news, and he rode forth that he might visit his army. But when he beheld the body of Piran he wept sore, and he remembered his kindness of old, and he grieved for the man that had been to him a father. Then he commanded that a royal tomb be raised unto Piran, and he seated him therein upon a throne of gold, and he did unto him all reverence. But when it was done, he aided his army to beat back the men of Turan yet again, and he caused them to sue for peace. And when they had brought forth their armour and piled it at the feet of Kai Khosrau, he bade them depart in peace. Then he returned with joy unto his own land, and he gave thanks unto God for the victory that was his. But he knew also that the time of peace could not be long, and that Afrasiyab would dream of vengeance. End of section 18, read by Inkell.
Section 19 of the Epic of Kings. Stories retold from Firdusi. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Epic of Kings by Firdusi. Translated by Helen Zimmern. The Passing of Kai Khosrau. How it came to pass is Kai Khosrau foretold. For Afrasiyab, when he learned the death of Piran, was beside himself with grief, and he lifted up his voice in wailing, and he spake, saying, I will no longer taste the joys of life, nor live like unto a man that weareth the crown, until I be avenged upon Kai Khosrau, the offspring of an accursed race. May the seed of Sayawash perish from off the face of the earth. And when he had so spoken, he made ready for yet another war. And from all corners of the earth the kings came forth to aid him. And Kai Khosrau, when he learned thereof, got ready his army also. And he sware that he would lead this war of vengeance unto a good end. So he sent greeting unto Rustem his pehlavah, and prayed of him that he would aid him in his resolve. And Rustem listened to the voice of his Shah, and came forth from Zubalistan with a mighty army to aid him. Then the Shah confided his hosts unto Tur and Rustem, and the valleys and the hills and the deserts and the plains were filled with the dust that uprose from their footsteps. And they were warriors that bare high their heads, and they knew neither weariness nor fear. Now when the armies met, Afrasiyab called before him Pashang his son, and bade him bear a writing unto the Shah of Iran. And he wrote, saying, That which thou hast done, it is contrary to custom. For a son may not lift his hand against his father, and the head of a grandson that goeth out in enmity against his grandsire is filled with evil. And I say unto thee, Sayawash was not slain without just cause, for he turned him away from his ruler. And if thou sayest unto me that I am an evil man, and issue of the race of Araman, remember that thou too art sprung from my loins, and that thy insults fall back upon thyself. Renounce, therefore, this strife, and let a treaty be made between us, and the blood of Sayawash be forgotten. And if thou wilt listen unto my voice, I will cover thee with jewels, and gold and precious things will I give unto thee, and joy shall reign throughout the land. But Kai Khosrau, when he had read this message, knew that Afrasiyab sought only to beguile him. So he sent a writing unto the king of Turan, and he said, The cause of strife between us is not sprung from Sayawash alone, but for that which thou didst aforetime, and which thy fathers did unto Irish. Yet that which thou hast done hath caused the measure of wrath to overflow, wherefore the sword alone can decide between us. Then he challenged the nobles of Turan to come forth in combat, and he himself strove with Shaddai, the son of Afrasiyab, and he laid him low after the manner in which Afrasiyab had laid low the head of Sayawash. And when he had done so, the army of Turan came forth to avenge their king, but the men of Iran overcame them. and Afrasiyab was constrained to fly from before the face of Kai Khosrau, and it was as gall and wormwood unto his spirit. And Kai Khosrau followed after him, and he would not suffer him to hide himself from his sight. And he made him come forth yet again in battle, and yet again he routed him utterly. And the men of Iran slew the men of Tehran, until the field of battle was like unto a sea of blood. And they fought until the night covered the heavens, and the eyes of the warriors were darkened with sleep. And Afrasiyab fled yet again beyond the borders of Tehran, and he craved of his vassals that they would hide him from the wrath of Kai Khosrau. But the nobles were afraid of the Shah, and of Rustem, who went with him, and they refused shelter unto Afrasiyab. And he was hunted over the face of the earth. Then he sought out the king of China, and asked of him that he would shelter him, and the king gave him shelter for a while. But when Kai Khosrau learned where Afrasiyab was hid, he followed after him, and he bade the king of China render to him his enemy, and he menaced him with fire and sword if he did not listen to his behest. So the king bade Afrasiyab depart from out his borders, and Afrasiyab fled yet again. But wheresoever he hid himself, he was found by Kai Khosrau, and his life was a weariness unto him. Now for the space of 2 years, Kai Khosrau did thus unto Afrasiyab, and the glory of Tehran was eclipsed. And Rustem reigned within the land. And when the 2nd year was ended, the power of Afrasiyab was broken, and Kai Khosrau bethought him to return unto Iran, and seek out Kai Khosrau his sire. And the old Shah, when he learned it, was young again for joy. He caused his house to be decked worthy a guest, and he made ready great feasts, and he called forth all his nobles to do honor unto Kai Khosrau his son. And all the land was decked in festal garb, and the world resembled cloth of gold, and musk and amber perfumed the air, and jewels were strewn about the streets like unto vile dust. Now when the Shah came nigh unto the city, Kai Khosrau went forth to meet him, and he prostrated him in the dust before his son. But Kai Khosrau suffered it not, but raised him, and he kissed him upon his cheeks, and he took his hand, and he told unto him of all the wonders that he had beheld upon his travels, and of the mighty deeds that had been done of Rustem and his men. And Kai Khosrau was filled with marvel at his grandson, and he could not cease from praising him and pouring gifts before his face. And when they had feasted the army, and were sated with speech, they went in unto the temple of Hormuzd, and gave thanks unto God for all his blessings. Now while these things were passing in the land of Iran, Afrasiyab wandered over the earth, and he knew neither rest nor nourishment, and his soul was unquiet, and his body was weary, and he feared danger on all sides. And he roamed till that he found a cavern in the side of a mountain, and he crept into it for rest. And he remained a while within the cave, pondering his evil deeds, and his heart was filled with repentance, and he prayed aloud unto God that he would grant him forgiveness of his sins, and the cries of his sorrow rent the air. Now the sound thereof pierced even unto the ears of Ho'um, a hermit of the race of Feridun, who had taken up his abode in the mountains. And Ho'um, when he heard the cries, said within himself, These are lamentations of Afrasiyab. So he sought out the spot whence they came forth, and when he had found Afrasiyab, he wrestled with him, and caught him in his snare. Then he bound him and led him even into Iran, before the face of Kai Khosrau, that the Shah might deal with him according to his desire. Now when Afrasiyab was come before the Shah, Kai Khosrau reproached him yet again with his vile deeds, and when he had done speaking, he lifted up his sword, and he smote with it the neck of Afrasiyab, and he severed his head from off his trunk, even as Afrasiyab had done unto Siawash his father. And thus was the throne of Tehran made void of Afrasiyab, and his evil deeds had in the end brought evil upon himself. And Jerzivas, whom the Shah had taken captive in the battle, was witness of the fate of his brother, and when he had looked upon the end of Afrasiyab, Kai Khosrau lifted up the sword against him also, and caused him to perish in like manner as he had slain Siawash. And when it was done, and the vengeance was complete, the Shah caused a writing to be sent unto all his lands, and to every noble therein and every vassal, even from the west unto the east. And he told unto them therein how the war of vengeance was ended, and how that the earth was delivered of the serpent brood. And he bade them think on the arts of peace and deliver up their hearts to gladness. And when it was done, Kai Khosrau made him ready to depart from the world. So he gave thanks unto God that he had suffered him to see the avenging of Siawash accomplished. And he said, I have beheld my grandson, the light of mine eyes, avenge me and himself. And now am I ready to go forth unto thee. For thrice 50 years have rolled above my head, and my hair is white and my heart is weary. And after he had thus spoken, Kai Khosrau passed away, and there remained of him in the world but the memory of his name. Then Kai Khosrau mourned for his grandsire, as was fitting. But when the days of mourning were ended, he mounted again the throne of the Kayanides. And for 60 years did Kai Khosrau rule the world in equity, and wisdom flourished unto his hands. And wheresoever the Shah looked, he beheld that his hand was stretched out in gladness, and there was peace in all the lands. Then he gave praise unto God that he had suffered him to do these things. And when he had done so, he pondered within himself, and he grew afraid lest Ahriman should get possession of his soul, and lest he should grow uplifted in pride like unto Jamshid, that forgot whence came his weal and the source of his blessings. So he said within himself, It behoveth me to be careful, for I am sprung from the race of Zohak, and perchance I may become a curse unto the earth, like to him. Wherefore I will entreat of Ormuzd, that he take me unto himself before this evil befall me, since there is no longer work for me to do on earth. Then he gave commandment to the keepers of the curtains that they suffer no man to enter in upon him, but he bade them refuse it with all kindness. And when it was done, Kai Khosrau withdrew him into the inner courts, and he ungirded him of his sash of might, and he laved his limbs in a running stream, and he presented himself in prayer before God his Maker. And for 7 days the Shah stood in the presence of Ormuzd, neither did he weary to importune him in prayer. Now while he did, so many great ones of Iran came unto the courts of the Shah, and demanded audience, and it was refused them. Then they murmured among themselves, and they marveled why the thoughts of the king should have grown dark in a time of good fortune. And when they found that their importunity availed them naught, they consulted among themselves what they should do. Then Gudar said, Let us send tidings of these things even unto Zal and Rustem, and entreat of them that they come unto our aid, for perchance Kai Khosrau will listen unto their voice. So Give was sent forth unto Zubulistan. Now when he was gone, it came about that on a certain day, when the sun had lifted his shield of gold above the world, Kai Khosrau ordained that the curtains of the audience chamber be lifted. So there came in unto him his mubids and the nobles, and they stood about his throne, and their hands were crossed in supplication. Then Kai Khosrau, when he saw it, asked of them what they desired. So they opened their mouths and said, May it please the Shah to tell unto us wherein we have failed, that we are shut out from his presence. Then Kai Khosrau answered and said, The fault is not with you, and the sight of my nobles is a feast unto mine eyes. But my heart hath conceived a desire that will not be quieted, and it giveth me rest neither by day nor by night, and I know not how it will end. Yet the time is not ripe to tell unto you my secrets, but verily I will speak when the hour is come. Return therefore unto your homes, and be glad in your spirits, and rejoice in the wine cup, for no foe troubled the land, and prosperity hangeth over Iran. Then when he had so spoken, Kai Khosrau dismissed them graciously. But when they were departed, he gave commandment that the curtains be closed, and that no man be suffered to enter his courts. And he presented him yet again before God. And he prayed in the fervor of his spirit, and he entreated of Ormuzd, that he would suffer him to depart from the world now, that his task therein was ended. For he beheld that his life is but vanity, and he yearned to go hence unto his Maker. And for the space of 5 weeks did Kai Khosrau stand thus before his God, and he could neither eat nor sleep, and his heart was disquieted. Now it came about one night that Kai Khosrau fell asleep for weariness, and there appeared unto him a vision, and the Siraj, the angel of God, stood before him, and he spake words of comfort to Kai Khosrau. And he said that the Shah had done that which was right in the sight of God, and he bade him prepare for his end, and he said, Before thou goest hence, choose from amongst thy nobles a king that is worthy the throne, and let him be a man that hath a care of all things that are created, even unto the tiny emmet that creepeth along the ground. And when thou hast ordered all things, the moment of thy departure shall be come. When Kai Khosrau awoke from his dream, he rejoiced, and poured out his thanks before God. Then he went unto his throne and seated himself thereon, and got together his treasures, and he ordered the world for his departure. Now while he did so, Zal and Rustem his son were come unto the city, and their hearts were filled with sore displeasure because of that which the nobles had told unto them. And the army came forth to greet them, and they wept sore, and prayed of Zal that he would turn back unto them the heart of Kai Khosrau. And they said, A Diev hath led him astray. Then Zal and Rustem went in before the Shah, and Kai Khosrau, when he saw them, was amazed, but he was glad also, and he gave them his hand in greeting, and he accorded to them seats of honor as was their due. And when he had done so, he asked of them wherefore they were come forth. Then Zal opened his mouth and spake, saying, I have heard, even in Zabulistan, that the curtains of the Shah are closed unto his servants. And the people cry out thereat, and men say that Kai Khosrau is departed from the path that is right. Wherefore I am come forth to entreat of thee, if thou have a secret care, that thou confide it to thy servant, and surely a device may be found. For since the days of Manijeh, there is no Shah like to thee. But thy nobles are afraid lest thou stumble in the paths of Zohak and Afrasiyab. Wherefore they entreat of me that I admonish thee. Now when Kai Khosrau had listened unto the voice of Zal the aged, he was not angered, but he answered, saying, O Zal, thou knowest not that whereof thou speakest, for I have withdrawn myself from men that I might do no evil. And I have prayed unto God that he take me unto himself. And now is the Siraj come unto me, and I know that Ormuzd hadst listened unto my voice. When the nobles heard this, they were afflicted. But Zal was angered, and he deemed that the wits of Kai Khosrau were distraught. And he said, Since I have stood before the throne of the Kayanides, no Shah hath spoken words like to thine. And I fear that a Diev hath led thee astray. And I implore of thee that thou listen not unto his voice, and that thou give ear unto the words of an aged man, and that thou turn thee back into the path that is right. And when Zal had done speaking, the nobles cried with one accord that he had spoken for them also. Then Kai Khosrau was sorrowful, but he would not suffer anger to come into his spirit. And when he had pondered, he opened his mouth and spake, saying, O Zal, I have given ear unto the words which thou hast spoken. Give ear now unto the answer, for I have not departed from the paths of Ormuzd, and no Diev hath led me astray. And I swear it unto thee, even by God the Most High, but because I am sprung from Afrasiyab, the evil one, and am linked unto the race of Zohak, I am afraid, and I fear to grow like to Jamshid and Tur, who wearied the world with their oppressions. And behold, I have avenged my father, and have made the world submissive unto my will. And I have established justice in the realm, and the earth is glad. Wherefore there is no longer aught for me to do, for the power of the wicked is broken. Therefore, lest I grow uplifted in my soul, I have entreated of Ormuzd that he suffer me now to go hence, even unto himself. For I am weary of the throne and of my majesty, and my soul crieth for rest. When Zal heard these words, he was confounded, for he knew that they were true. And he fell in the dust before the Shah, and he craved his forgiveness for the hard speech that he had spoken, and he wept, saying, O Kai Khosrau, we desire not that thou go hence. And the Shah accorded forgiveness unto the old man, because of the great love he bare him. And he lifted him from the ground and kissed him. And when he had done so, he bade him go forth with Rustem, and he commanded that the nobles and all their armies should camp upon the plains. And Zal did as the Shah desired, and the hosts were encamped without the doors. Now when it was done, Kai Khosrau mounted upon the crystal throne, and he held in his hand the ox-headed mace, and he bare on his head the crown of the Chionides, and a sash of might was girded round his loins. And on his right hand stood Rustem the Pehlavah, and on his left Zal the aged. And he lifted up his voice and spake words of wisdom unto his army. And he said unto them that the sojourn of man was brief upon the earth, and that it became him to remember his end. And he said how he had also bethought him of his death. And he spake, saying, I have made me ready to depart, and my testament will I speak before you. I will give richly unto those that have wearied themselves in my service, and of those to whom I owe gratitude I will speak unto God, and implore of him that he reward them according to their deserts. And I give unto the Iranians my gold, and my armor, and my jewels, and whosoever is great among you, to him do I give a province. Thus for the space of 7 days did the Shah sit upon his throne, and order his treasurer how he should act. Then on the 8th he called before him Gudars the wise, and he gave to him instructions, and he bade him be kind unto the poor, and the widowed, and the fatherless, and he entreated him to dry the eye of care. Then he gave unto him much treasure, and rendered unto him thanks for the services that he had done before him. And he gave rich gifts also unto Zal, and Giv, and Rustem, and to all his nobles according to their degree. And he desired of them that they should ask a boon at his hands, and whatsoever it was he gave it. And he spake, saying, May my memory be hateful unto none. Then he called before him Rustem, and praised the mighty deeds that he had done, and he invoked the blessings of heaven upon his Pehlavah. And after many days, when all these things were accomplished, the Shah was weary, but his task was not yet fulfilled. For there was one among the nobles whose name he had not named, and the others knew thereof. But they ventured not again to admonish Kai Khosrau, for they were amazed at his wisdom and his justice, and they saw that he did that which was right. Now after some time the Shah opened his mouth and called before him Byzun, and he said, Lead forth before me Lohurasp, who is sprung from the seed of Husheng, the Shah. And Byzun did as Kai Khosrau commanded. Now when he had brought Lohurasp before the throne, Kai Khosrau descended from its height, and he gave his hand unto Lohurasp, and blessed him. Then he put upon his head the crown of the Chionides, and saluted him Shah, and he said, May the world be submissive to thy will. But the nobles, when they saw it, were confounded, and they murmured among themselves that Lohurasp should have the kingdom, and they questioned wherefore they should pay allegiance unto him. Then Kai Khosrau was angered, and he opened his lips, saying, Ye speak of that ye know not, and haste hath unbridled your tongues. For I say unto you, that which I have done justly, and in the sight of God. And I know that Rustem is a man worthy the throne, and that Iran will prosper under his hands. And I desire that ye salute him, Shah, and whosoever regardeth not this, my last desire, I hold him a rebel unto God, and judgment shall fall upon him. Now Zal, when he heard these words, knew that they were just. So he stepped out from among the nobles and came before Rustem, and did obeisance unto him, as to the Shah. And the army, when they saw it, shouted their homage also, and all the land of Iran was made acquainted with the tidings. Now when it was done, Kai Khosrau turned him to his nobles, saying, I go now to prepare my spirit for death. And when he had so spoken, he entered behind the curtains of his house. And he called before him his women, and he told unto them how he should depart. And they wept sore at the tidings. Then Kai Khosrau confided them unto Rustem, and he gave to him safe counsels, and he said, Be thou the woof and warp of justice. And when all was ready, he gat him upon his horse to go forth into the mountains. And Rustem would have gone also, but Kai Khosrau suffered it not. But there went with him Zal and Rustem, Gudars also, and Gustahem and Give, and Byzun the valiant, and Firdusi the son of Kai Khosrau, and Tus the Peplava. And they followed after him from the plains unto the crest of the mountains, and they ceased not from mourning that which was done of Kai Khosrau. And they said among themselves that never had Shah done like unto him, and they strove to change his purpose. But Kai Khosrau said unto them, All is well, wherefore weep ye and trouble my spirit? Now, when they were gone with him the space of 7 days, Kai Khosrau turned unto his nobles and spake, saying, Return now upon the road that ye are come, for I am about to enter in upon a path where neither herb nor water can be found. Wherefore I entreat of you that ye spare yourselves this weariness. Then Zal and Rustem and Gudars the aged listened unto the voice of the Shah, for they knew that he spake that which it became them to obey. But the others refused ear unto his voice, and they followed after him yet another day. But their force was spent in the desert. Now when the evening of that day was come, they found a running stream. Then Kai Khosrau said, Let us halt in this spot. And when they were encamped, he spake unto them of the things that were past. And he said unto them that when the sun should have lifted up its face anew, they should behold him no longer in their midst, for the time of his departure was at hand. And when the night was fallen, he drew aside and bathed his body in the water, and prayed unto God his Maker. Then he came yet again before his nobles, and he awakened them from their slumbers, and he spake unto them words of parting. And he said, When the daylight shall be come back, I say unto you, return upon your path, neither linger in this place, though it should rain musk and amber, for out of the mountains a great storm will arise, that shall uproot the trees and strip the leaves from off their branches, and there shall come a fall of snow such as Iran hath not seen the like. But if ye do not as I say unto you, verily ye shall never find the path of return. Now the nobles were troubled when they heard these words, and the slumber that fell upon their eyelids was filled with sorrow. But when the raven of night flew upwards, and the glory of the world flooded the earth with its light, Kai Khosrau was vanished from among them, and they sought out his traces in vain. Now when they beheld that he was gone, they wept in the bitterness of their hearts. And Firdusi spake, saying, O my friends, listen to the words that I shall speak. I pray of you, let us linger yet a while in this spot, lest peradventure Kai Khosrau should return. And since it is good to be here, I know not wherefore we should haste to depart. And the nobles listened to his voice, and they encamped them on this spot. And they spake continually of Kai Khosrau, and wept for him. But they forgot the commandment that he had spoken. Now while they slept, there arose a mighty wind, and it brought forth clouds, and the sky grew dark, and before the daylight was come back unto the world, The earth was wrapped in snow like to a shroud, and none could tell the valleys and the hills asunder. And the nobles, when they awoke, knew not whither they should turn, and they sought after their path in vain, and the snow fell down upon them, and they could not flee them of its might. And though they strove against it, arose above their heads and buried them, and after a little the life departed out of their bodies. Now after many days, when Zal and Rustem and Gutars beheld that the nobles returned not, they grew afraid and sent forth riders to seek them. And the men searched long, but in the end they found the bodies, and they bare them down into the plains. And sore was the wailing in the army when they beheld it, and a noble tomb was raised above their heads. But Rustem, when he learned that Kai Khosrau was vanished, mounted the throne of the Kayanides, and he called before him his people that they should do allegiance unto him. And they did so, and the place of Kai Khosrau knew him no more. End of section 19. Section 21 of the Epic of Kings. Stories retold from Firdusi. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Epic of Kings by Firdusi. Translated by Helen Zimmern. Isfendiyar. Rustem reigned in wisdom upon the crystal throne, and Iran was as wax under his hands, and men were content under his sway, save only Gushtasp, his son, who was rebellious of spirit, and Gushtasp was angered because his father would not abandon unto him the sovereignty. Wherefore, when he beheld that his pleading was vain, he stole away from Iran, and sought out the land of Roum, and the city that Selim his forefather had builded. And he did great deeds of prowess in the land, so that the king gave unto him his daughter to wife. Now Rustem, when he learned of the mighty deeds done of his son, strove to win him back unto himself. So he sent messengers bearing words of greeting, and entreated of Gushtasp that he would return unto the courts of his father. And he sware unto him that if he would listen unto his voice, he would abandon unto him the throne. So Gushtasp listened to the voice of his father, and he returned him unto Iran. And Rustem stepped down from off the throne of the Kayanides, and gave place unto Gushtasp his son. And 120 years had he reigned in equity. And now that it was done, he hid himself within the temples of Balk, that he might live in the sight of God, and make him ready to meet his end. And Gushtasp, his son, ruled the land worthily, and he administered justice in such wise that sheep could drink at the same brook as the wolves. Now when he had sat some while upon the throne, there appeared in the land Zerdusht, the prophet of the Most High, and he came before the Shah and taught him. And he went out in all the land and gave unto the people a new faith. And he purged Iran of the might of Ahriman. He reared throughout the realm a tree of goodly foliage, and men rested beneath its branches. And whosoever ate of the leaves thereof was learned in all that regarded the life to come. But whosoever ate of the branches was perfect in wisdom and faith. And Zerdusht gave unto men the Zendavesta, and he bade them obey its precepts if they would attain everlasting life. But tidings concerning Zerdusht were come even unto Archasp, who sat upon the throne of Afrasiyab, and he said within himself, This thing is vile. So he refused ear unto the faith, and he sent a writing unto Gushtasp, wherein he bade him return unto the creed of his fathers. And he said, If thou turn thee not, make thee ready for combat. For verily I say unto thee, that unless thou cast out Zerdusht, this man of guile, I will overthrow thy kingdom and seat me upon thy throne. When Gushtasp heard the haughty words that Arjasp had spoken, He marveled within himself. Then he called before him a scribe, and sent back answer unto Arjasp. And he said that he would deliver up unto the sword whosoever swerved from the paths of Zerdusht, and whosoever would not choose them, him also would he destroy. And he bade him therefore get ready to meet Iran in battle. Then when he had sent this writing, Gushtasp got together his host and mustered them, and he beheld that they outnumbered the grass upon the fields, and the dust that uprose from their feet darkened the sky, and the neighing of their horses and the clashing of their armor were heard above the music of the cymbals, and the banners pierced the clouds like the trees that grow upon a mountain. And Gushtasp gave the command of this host unto Isfendiyar, his son. And Isfendiyar was a hero of renown, and his tongue was a bright sword, and his heart was bounteous as the ocean, and his hands were like the clouds when rain falls to glad the earth. And he took the lead of the army, and he led it forth into Turan. Now, when the men of Turan and of Iran met in conflict, a great battle was waged between them, and for the space of 27 days they did not cease from combat. Neither did any of the heroes close their eyes in slumber, and their rage was hot one against another. But in the end the might of Iran overcame, and Arjasp fled before the face of Isfendiyar. Then Isfendiyar returned him unto Iran and presented himself before his father, and demanded a blessing at his hands. But Gushtasp said, The time is not yet come when thou shouldst mount the throne. So he sent him forth yet again, that he might turn all the lands unto the faith of Zerdusht. And Isfendiyar did as Gushtasp commanded. Now while he was gone forth, there came before the Shah one Gurjam, who was of evil mind and foe unto Isfendiyar. And he spake ill of Isfendiyar unto his father, and he said unto Gushtasp that his son strove to wrest from him the sovereignty. And Gushtasp, when he learned it, was wroth, and he sent forth messengers that they should search out Isfendiyar, and bring him before the Shah in the assembly of the nobles. And when Isfendiyar was come, Gushtasp spake not unto him in greeting, but he turned him to his nobles, and he recounted unto them a parable. Then he told unto them of a son who sought to put to death his father, and he asked of them what punishment this father should mete out unto his child. And the nobles cried with one accord, This thing which thou relatest unto us, it is not right. And if there be a son so evil, let him be put into chains and cast in bondage. Then Gushtasp said, Let Isfendiyar be put into chains. And Isfendiyar opened his mouth in vain before his father, but Gushtasp would not listen unto his voice. So they cast him out into a dungeon, and chains of weight were hung upon him. And the daylight came not nigh unto him, neither did joy enter into his heart. And he languished many years, and the heart of the Shah was not softened towards him. Now when Arjasp learned that the might of Isfendiyar was fettered, and that Gushtasp was given over to pleasures, he gathered together an army to fall into Iran and avenge the defeat that was come upon his hosts. So he fell upon Balkh before any were aware of it, and he put to death Luhur-Rasp the Shah, and he made captive the daughters of Gushtasp. And Arjasp threw fire into the temples of Zerdusht, and did much destruction unto the city. And it was some while ere Gushtasp learned that which he had done. But when he had news thereof, he was dismayed, and he called together his army and put himself at their head. But the Turanians were mightier than he, and they routed him utterly, and Gushtasp fled before their face. Then the Shah called together his nobles and consulted with them how he should act in these sore straits. And one among them, who was wise above the rest, said, I counsel thee that thou release Isfendiyar thy son, and that thou give to him the command, that he alone can deliver the land. And Gushtasp said, I will do as you sayest. And if Isfendiyar shall deliver us from this foe, I will abandon unto him the throne and the crown. Then he sent messengers unto Isfendiyar, that they should unbind his chains. But Isfendiyar, when they came before him, closed ear unto their voice, and he said, My father hath kept me in bondage until he hath need of me. Why therefore shall I weary me in his cause? I will not go unto his aid. Then the men reasoned with him, and they told unto him how it had been revealed unto Gushtasp that the words spoken of Gershom were false, and that he had sworn that he would deliver this man of false words unto the vengeance of his son. But Isfendiyar was deaf yet again to their voice. Then one spake and said, Thou knowest not that thy brother is in bondage unto Arshasp. Surely it behoveth thee to deliver him. When Isfendiyar heard these words, he sprang unto his feet, and he commanded that the chains be struck from off his limbs. And because the men were slow, he was angered, and shook himself mightily, so that the fetters fell down at his feet. Then he made haste to go before his father, and peace was made between them on that day. And Gushtasp sware a great oath that he would give the throne unto Isfendiyar, when he should return unto him victorious. So Isfendiyar went out against the foes of Iran, and he mowed them down with the sword, and he caused arrows to rain upon them like hail in spring, and the sun was darkened by the flight of the weapons, and he brake the power of Arshasp, king of Turan, and he drove him out from the borders of the realm. And when it was done, and the men of Iran had prevailed over the men of Turan, Isfendiyar presented himself before his father, and craved of him the fulfillment of his promises. But Gushtasp, when he beheld that all was well once more, repented him of his resolve, for he desired not to give the throne unto his son. So he pondered in his spirit what he should say in his excuse, and he was ashamed in his soul, but his mouth revealed not the thoughts of his heart. And he spake angrily unto his son, and he said, I marvel that thou comest before me with this demand. For while thy sisters languish in the bondage of Arshasp, it beseemeth us not to hold this war as ended, lest men mock us with their tongues. And it hath been told unto me that they are hidden in the brazen fortress, and that Arshasp and all his men are gone in behind its walls. I charge thee, therefore, overthrow the castle and deliver thy sisters who pine. And I swear unto thee, when thou hast done it, I will abandon unto thee the throne, and thy name shall be exalted in the land. Then Isfendiyar said, I am the servant of the Shah. Let him command his slave what he shall do. And Gushtasp said, Go forth. Then Isfendiyar answered, I go, but the road is not known unto me. And Gushtasp said, A Mubid hath revealed it unto me. 3 roads lead unto the fortress of brass, and one required 3 months to traverse, but it is safe, and much pasture is found on its path. And the second demandeth but 2 moons, yet it is a desert void of herbs. And the third asketh but 7 days, but it is fraught with danger. Then Isfendiyar said, No man can die before his time is come. It behoveth a man of valor to choose ever the shortest path. Now the Mubids and the nobles who knew the dangers that were hidden in this path sought to deter him. But Isfendiyar would not listen to their voice. So he set forth with his army, and they marched until they came to the spot where the roads divided. Now it needed 7 stages to reach the fortress of Arshasp, and at each stage there lurked a danger, and never yet had any man overcome them, or passeth beneath its walls. But Isfendiyar would not give ear to fear, and he set forth upon the road, and each day he overcame a danger, and each danger was greater than the last. And on the first day he slew 2 raging wolves, and on the second he laid low 2 evil Dievs that were clothed as lions, and on the third he overcame a dragon, whose breath was poison. And on the 4th day Isfendiyar slew a great magician, who would have lured him into the paths of evil. And on the 5th he slew a mighty bird, whom no man had ever struck down. And weariness was not known of Isfendiyar. Neither could he rest from his labors, for there was no camping place in this road of danger. And on the 6th day he was nigh to have perished with his army in a deep snow that fell upon him through the might of the Dievs. But he prayed unto God in his distress, and by the favor of heaven the snow vanished from under his feet. Then on the 7th day he came nigh to perish in a flood of waters. But Isfendiyar overcame them also, and stood before the castle of Arjasp. Now when he beheld it, his heart failed within him, for he saw that it was compassed by a wall of brass, and the thickness thereof was such that 4 horsemen could ride thereon abreast. So he sighed and said, This place cannot be taken. My pains have been in vain. Yet he pondered in his spirit how it might be done, and he knew that only wild could avail. Wherefore he disguised himself in the garb of a merchant, and chose forth from his army 100 camels, and he loaded them with brocades of room and much treasure. 160 stalwart warriors, too, did he choose forth, and he seated them in chests, and the chests he bound upon the backs of the camels. And when the caravan was ready, he marched at its head unto the doors of the fortress. Now when he was come thither, he craved permission of Arjasp, that he might enter and sell unto them that dwelt therein. And Arjasp granted his request, and gave unto him house room, and bade him barter his wares in safety. Then Isfendiyar spread forth his goods, and unloaded the treasures of the camels. But the chests wherein were hidden the warriors did he keep from the eyes of men. And after he had sojourned a while in the castle, he beheld his sisters, and he saw that they were held as slaves, and his heart went out towards them. So he spake to them tenderly, and they knew his voice, and that help was come out to them. But they held their peace and made no sign. And Isfendiyar, when he saw that he was trusted of Arjasp, came before him, and asked of him a boon. And Arjasp said that he would grant it. Then Isfendiyar said, Suffer that ere I go hence I may feast thee, and thy nobles, that I may show my gratitude. And it was done as Isfendiyar desired, and he made a great feast, and troubled the heads of the nobles with wine. And when their heads were heavy, and the moon was seated upon her silver throne, Isfendiyar arose and let forth his warriors from the chests. Then he fell upon the nobles and slew them, and they weltered in their blood. And with his own hand Isfendiyar struck down Arjasp, and he hung up his sons upon high gallows. Then he made signals unto his army, that they should come forth to aid him, for there were yet many men hidden in the fort, and Isfendiyar had but a handful wherewith to withstand them. And they did as he desired, and there was a great slaughter within the brazen fort. But Isfendiyar bare off the victory. Then he took with him his sisters and much booty, and made haste to return unto Iran, and come into the presence of Gustasp his father. And the Shah rejoiced in his sight, and he made a great feast, and gave gifts richly unto all his servants. And the mouths of men overflowed with the doughty deeds done of Isfendiyar, and there was gladness throughout the land. End of section 20. Section 21 of the Epic of Kings. Stories retold from Firdusi. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Epic of Kings by Firdusi, translated by Helen Zimmern. Rustem and Isfendiyar. When a little while had been passed in feasting, Isfendiyar came before Gustasp, his father, and demanded the fulfillment of the promises that he had made unto him. And he recalled unto Gustasp how he had mistrusted him and thrown him into chains. And he spake of the doughty deeds that he had done at his behest. And he craved him to remember that Isfendiyar was his son, and Gushtasp knew that that which was spoken was right, but he desired not to abandon the throne, wherefore he communed within him what he should do. Then he opened his mouth and spake, saying, Verily, thou hast done that which thou sayest, and there is none who is thine equal in this world, save only Rustem, the son of Zal. And he acknowledgeth none his like. Now because he is grown proud in his spirit, and hath rendered no homage unto me, neither is come forth to aid me against Arjasp. I desire that thou go forth unto Zubulistan, and that thou lead out the Pevliva, and bring him bound before me, that he may know that I am the Shah, and that he must do my behests. And when thou shalt have done it, I swear unto thee by him from whom cometh all strength, and who hath kindled the sun and the stars unto light, that I will step down from the throne, neither withhold it from thee any longer. Then Isfendiyar said, O king, I would entreat of thee that thou ponder the words that thou hast spoken, for thine ancestors held this old man, ripe in wisdom, in much honor, and he was a staff unto their throne. Now since thou callest him not forth, it was not fitting he should aid thee against Turan. But Gushtasp would not listen unto the words of Isfendiyar, and he said, If they lead not Rustem bound before me, I will not grant unto thee the throne. Then Isfendiyar said, Thou sendest me forth in guile on this emprise, for verily no man hath stood against the might of Rustem, wherefore I perceive that thou desirest not to abandon unto me the throne. I say unto thee, therefore, that I desire it no longer, but since I am thy slave, it beseemeth me to obey thy behests. I go forth therefore, and if peradventure I fall before Rustem, thou wilt answer unto God for my blood. And when he had so spoken, Isfendiyar went out of the presence of the Shah, and he was exceeding sorrowful. Then he gathered together an army, and he set forth upon the road that leadeth to Sastan. Now, when they were gone but a little way, the camel that walked at their head laid him down in the dust, and the driver struck him, but he would not rise from the earth. Then Isfendiyar said, The omen is evil. But he commanded the driver that he cut off the head, that the evil might fall upon the beast, and tarnish not the glory of the Shah. And it was done as Isfendiyar desired, but he could not rid him of his sadness, and he pondered in his spirit this sign. Now when they were come unto the land of Zubulistan, Isfendiyar spake, saying, I will send an envoy unto Rustem, a man prudent and wise, and I will entreat of the Pevliva that he come before me with gladness, for I desire no evil unto him, and I come forth only at the behest of the Shah. Then he called before him Bahman, his son, and he spake long unto him, and he charged him with a message unto Rustem, and he bade him speak unto the son of Zal. Gushtasp was angered because he sought not his courts, wherefore he deemed that Rustem was grown proud in his spirit, and would uplift himself above his Shah. And he said, The king hath sent me out that I lead thee before him. I pray thee, therefore, come unto me, and I swear unto thee that no harm shall befall thee at his hands. For when I shall have led thee before him, I will demand as my guerdon that he suffer thee to go unharmed. So Bahman laid up these words in his spirit, and he went with all speed unto the courts of Rustem. Now he found therein none but Zal, for Rustem was gone forth with his warriors to chase the wild ass. And Zal came forth with courtesy to greet Bahman, and he asked of him his desires, and he invited him unto a feast. But Bahman said, My mission doth admit of no delay. Isfendiyar hath bidden me not to tarry by the road. Tell me, therefore, where I may find thy son. Then Zal showed him unto the way. Now when Bahman was come unto the spot, he beheld a man like unto a mountain, who was roasting a wild ass for his supper, and in his hand was a wine cup, and about him stood brave knights. Then Bahman said within himself, Surely this is Rustem. And he watched him from where he was hid, and he beheld that Rustem devoured the whole of a wild ass for his meal, and he was amazed at the might and majesty of this man. Then he thought within him, Peradventure, if I cast down a rock upon him, I may slay him, for surely even Isfendiyar, my father, shall not withstand his strength. So he loosened a rock from the mountainside and set it rolling unto the spot where Rustem was encamped. Now Zeverah heard the sound thereof and beheld the rock, and he said unto Rustem, Behold a rock that springeth forth from the mountainside. But Rustem smiled, and arose not from his seat, and when the rock was upon him, he lifted up his foot and threw it far unto the other side. Then Bahman was amazed, but he was affrighted also, and he dared not come forth at once. Yet when he was come before the Pehlavah, Rustem greeted him kindly, and would have entertained him, and Bahman suffered it, and he marveled yet again when he beheld that which was eaten of Rustem, and he was afraid. Then he delivered unto him the message of Isfendiyar, his father, and Rustem listened unto it, and when it was ended he spake, saying, Be a greeting unto the hero of renown, and say unto him that I have longed to look upon his face, and that I rejoice that he is come forth unto Zabulistan. But his demand is the device of Dievs, and I would counsel him that he depart not from the paths of wisdom. And I say unto him, Count not upon thy strength, for it is given to no man to shut up the winds within a cage. Neither can any man stand against my might. And I have ever done that which was right before the Shahs, thy fathers, and no man hath beheld Rustem in chains. Therefore thy demand is foolish, and I bid thee abandon it, and honor my house with thy presence. And when we shall have feasted, I will go forth with thee before Gushtasp, thy father, and the reins of my horse shall be tied unto thine throughout the journey. And when I shall be come before the Shah, and shall have taken counsel with him, I know that his anger against me, which is unjust, will vanish like unto smoke. Then Rustem sent a messenger unto Ruda Bey, his mother, to make ready a great feast in his courts, and Bahman sped back unto his father. Now Isfendiyar, when he had listened unto the words sent by Rustem, mounted his steed, and rode forth to meet him. And Rustem was come forth also, and they met beside the stream. Then Rakush swam across its breadth, and the hero of the world stood before Isfendiyar, and he greeted him, and did homage unto the son of his Shah. And Rustem rejoiced in the sight of Isfendiyar, and he deemed that he beheld in him the face of Sayawash. And he said unto him, O young man, let us commune together concerning the things that divide us. And Isfendiyar assented unto the desires of Rustem, and he pressed him unto his bosom, and his eyes could not cease from gazing upon his strength. Then Rustem said, O hero, I have a prayer to make before thee. I crave that thou enter into my house as my guest. And Isfendiyar said, I cannot listen unto thy demand, for the Shah commanded me neither to rest nor tarry, until I shall have brought thee unto him in chains. But I entreat of thee that thou consider that the chains of the King of Kings do not dishonor, and that thou listen willingly unto the desires of the Shah. For I would not lift my hand in anger against thee, and I am grieved that it hath been given unto me to do this thing, but it behoveth me to fulfill the commandments of my father. Thus spake Isfendiyar in the unquietude of his spirit, for he knew that what was demanded of Rustem was not fitting or right. And Rustem replied, saying, It would be counted shame unto me if thou shouldst refuse to enter into my house. I pray thee, therefore, yet again, that thou accede to my desires, and while it shall be done, I will do that which thou desirest, save only that I cannot submit unto the chains. For no man hath beheld me fettered, neither shall any do so while I draw my breath. I have spoken, and that which I have said, it is true. And Isfendiyar said, I may not feast with thee, and if thou listen not to my voice, I must fall upon thee in enmity. But today let there be a truce between us, and drink thou with me in my tents. And Rustem said, I will do so gladly, suffer only that I go forth and change my robes, for I am clad for the chase. And when thy meal shall be ready, send forth a messenger that he may lead me thither. And when he had so spoken, Rustem leaped upon Rakush, and returned unto his courts. Now when he had arrayed himself for the banquet, he awaited the envoy that Isfendiyar should send. But Isfendiyar was full of cares, and he said to Bashatan, his brother, We have regarded this affair too lightly, for it is full of danger. Wherefore I have no place in the house of Rustem, neither should he enter into mine, for the sword must decide our strife, for which cause I shall not bid him unto my feast. Then Bashatan answered and said, A DF hath led thee astray, O my brother, for it is not fitting that men like unto Rustem and Isfendiyar should meet in enmity. Wherefore I counsel thee that thou listen not unto our father, for his desires are evil, and he seeketh but to ensnare thee. Yet thou art wiser than he. Abandon therefore this device of evil. But Isfendiyar answered and said, If I obey not the words of the king my father, it will be a reproach unto me in this world, and I shall have to render account for it in the next before God my Maker. And I would not lose both worlds because of Rustem. Then Bashatan said, I have given unto thee counsel according to my wisdom. It resteth with thee to do as thou desirest. Then Isfendiyar bade the cooks serve before him the banquet, but he sent not forth to call Rustem unto the feast. Now Rustem, when he had waited a long while and beheld that Isfendiyar sent not to call him forth, was angered, and he said, Is this the courtesy of a king? And he sprang upon Rakush and rode unto the tents of the prince, that he might question him, wherefore he regarded Rustem thus lightly. Now the warriors of Iran, when they beheld the pavlova, murmured among themselves against Gushtasp, and they spake as with the voice of one man, that surely the Shah was bereft of reason, or he would not thus send Isfendiyar unto death. And they said, Gushtasp loveth yet more his treasures and his throne, as age creepeth upon him, and this is but a device to preserve them unto himself. Now Rustem, when he had presented himself before Isfendiyar, spake and said, O young man, it would seem unto me that thou didst not deem thy guest worthy a messenger. Yet I say unto thee, that it is I who have made the throne of Iran to shine out unto all the world, and I have ever been the pavlova of its shahs, and have endured much pain and toil for their sakes. And I have not passed a day, save in doing which is right, and I have purged the land of its enemies. I am the protector of the kings of Iran, and the mainstay of the good in all places of the earth. Wherefore it behoveth thee not to treat me thus disdainfully. Then Isfendiyar said, O Rustem, be not angered against me, but listen wherefore I sent not forth to call thee. For the day was hot and the road long, and I bethought me that fatigue would come upon thee from this course. Therefore I had resolved to visit thee in the morning. But since thou hast taken upon thee this fatigue, I pray of thee that thou rest within my tents, and that we empty the wine cup together. Then he made a place for him at his left hand. But Rustem said, This is not my place. It is not fitting that I should sit upon thy left, for my seat hath ever been at the right hand of the Shah. Then Isfendiyar bade a chair of gold be brought, and he caused it to be placed upon his right, and he bade Rustem be seated upon it, and Rustem sat him down. But he was angered in his spirit because of the dishonor that Isfendiyar had shown unto him. Now when they had drunk together a while, Isfendiyar lifted up his voice and said, O Rustem, it hath been told unto me that thine origin is evil, for thou art sprung from a Diev whom Som cast forth from his house, and he was reared of a vile bird, and his nourishment was garbage. Then Rustem said, Why speakest thou words that do hurt? And he told unto him of his father, and Som and Nariman, who was of the race of Husheng, the Shah. And he vaunted the great deeds done of his house, and he hid not that which he had accomplished himself, and he said, 600 years have passed since I came forth from the loins of Zal, and for that space I have been the pavlova of the world, and have feared neither that which was manifest, nor that which was hid. And I speak these things that thou mayest know. Thou art the king, and they that carry high their heads are thy subjects. But thou art new unto the world, wherefore thou knowest not the things that are come to pass. When Isfendiyar had listened unto the words of Rustem, he smiled and spake, saying, I have given ear unto thy voice. Give ear now also unto the words that I shall speak. Then he vaunted him of his forefathers, and he recounted unto Rustem how that he had overcome the Turks, and how Gushtasp had cast him into chains. And he told him of the 7 stations, and that he had converted the world unto the faith of Zerdusht. And he said, We have spoken enough concerning ourselves. Let us drink until we be weary. But Rustem said, Not so, for thou hast not heard all the deeds that I have done, for they are many, and the ear sufficeth not to hear them, nor the mouth to tell. For if thou knewest them, thou wouldst not exalt thyself above me, or think to cast me into chains. And he recounted to him yet again of his deeds of might. But Isfendiyar said, I entreat of thee that thou apply thyself unto the wine cup, for verily thou shalt fall tomorrow in the fight, and the days of thy feasting shall be ended. And Rustem answered, Boast not thus rashly, thou shalt yet repent thee of thy words. But tomorrow we will meet in conflict since thou desirest. And when I shall have lifted thee from off thy saddle, I will bear thee unto my house, and spread a feast before thee, and pour upon thee my treasures. And when it shall be done, I will return with thee unto the courts of the Shah, thy father, and uproot from his spirit this plant of evil. And when thou shalt be mounted into his seat, I will serve thee with gladness as thy pavlova. But Isfendiyar said, Thy words are idle, and we waste but our breath in talking of combat. Let us therefore apply us to the banquet. And they did so, and ate and drank until the night was far spent, and all men were amazed at the hunger of Rustem. Now when it was time for him to depart, he prayed Isfendiyar yet again that he would be his guest, and yet again Isfendiyar refused it to him. And he said, Suffer that I put chains about thee, and lead thee forth into Iran, that Gushtas be satisfied. But if thou wilt not do this thing, I must attack thee with the spear. Now Rustem, when he heard these words, was sorrowful in his soul, and he thought within him, If I suffer these chains, it is a stain that cannot be wiped out, and I cannot outlive my dishonor. For men will mock at Rustem, who permitted a boy to lead him bound. Yet if I slay this youth, I do evil, for he is son unto the Shah, and my glory will be tarnished, for men will say I lifted my hand against a Kyanidi, and there can arise no good out of this combat, wherefore I will strive yet again to win him unto wisdom. So he lifted up his voice and said, I pray thee listen not to the counsel of Dievs, and shut thy lips concerning these chains. For it seemeth unto me that Gustasp desireth evil against thee, that he sendeth thee forth against Rustem, the unvanquished in fight. Dishonour, therefore, not the champion of thy fathers, but feast within my gates. And let us ride forth in friendship unto Iran. But Isfendiyar said, I charge thee, O man, that thou waste not words concerning this thing. For I will not disobey the behests of my father. Prepare therefore for combat, for tomorrow I will make the world dark unto thine eyes. Then Rustem said, O foolish youth, when I grasp thy mace, the head of my foe is lost. Prepare thee rather for thine end. And when he had so spoken, he rode forth from out the tents of Isfendiyar, and he was exceedingly sorrowful. But Isfendiyar smiled after him and said, The mother that hath borne thee shall weep. I will cast thee down from Rakush. I will lead thee bound into Iran. But once again did Bashatan come before Isfendiyar, and he pleaded with him for Rustem, and he bade him remember the great deeds that he had done unto Iran, and he desired him not to lift his hand against the Pehlavah. But Isfendiyar said, He is a thorn in my rose garden, and through him alone can I attain unto the throne. Strive not therefore to hinder me, for thy pains will be in vain. For Zerdusht hath spoken that whatsoever honoureth not the behest of his king, he shall surely suffer the pains of hell. And my father hath told unto me to do this thing, and though I grieve to do hurt unto Rustem, the desires of the Shah shall be accomplished. Then Bashatan sighed and said, Alas, a Diev hath taken possession of thy spirit. Now Rustem, when he was come into his house, commanded that his leopard skin should be brought before him, and his helmet of Rum, his spirit of Ind also, and the war garb of Rakush. And when he saw them, he said, O my raiment of battle, ye have rested a long time from strife, yet now must I take you forth again to combat, and it is for the hardest fight that ye have fought, for I must lift my hand against the son of my master, or suffer that he disgrace me in the sight of men. And Rustem was sad, and all night he spake unto Zal of his end, and what he should do if he fell in battle. Then when the morning was come, he girded on his armour, but he resolved in his spirit that he would strive again with Isfendiyar in words. So he rode forth unto the tents of the young king, and when he was come nigh unto them, he shouted with a loud voice, and he said, O Isfendiyar, hero of great renown, the man with whom thou wouldst wrestle is come forth. Make thee ready, therefore, to meet him. Then Isfendiyar came out from his tents, and he was armed for battle. Now when they were met, Rustem opened his mouth and prayed him yet again that he would stay his hand from his impiety. And he said, If thou so thirstest at the blood and the tumult of battle, suffer that our hosts meet in combat, that thy desires may be satisfied. But Isfendiyar said, Thy talk is folly. Thou art armed for the conflict. Let not the hours be lost. Then Rustem sighed and made him ready for combat, and he assailed Isfendiyar with his lance, but with a nimble stroke Isfendiyar resisted his attack, and they fought with their lances until they were bent, and when that was done they betook them unto swords, and ever the heroes parried the strokes that were dealt, and when their swords were broken they seized upon maces, but either hero warded off the blows. And when fought until that their shields were rent, and their helmets dinted with the blows, and their armor was pierced in many places, and it was a bitter fight, but the end thereof came not, and they were weary, and neither had gained the upper hand. So they rested them a while from combat, but when they were rested they fell again one on another, and they fought with arrows and bows, and the arrows of Isfendiyar whizzed through the air, and fastened into the body of Rustem and of Rakush his steed. And twice 30 arrows did Isfendiyar thus send forth, until that Rakush was like to perish from his wounds. And Rustem also was covered with gore, and no man before this one had ever done harm unto his body. But the arrows of Rustem had done no ill unto Isfendiyar, because Firdusi had charmed his body against all dangers, so that it was like unto brass. Now Isfendiyar, when he beheld that Rustem staggered in his seat, called out unto him to surrender himself into his hands, and suffered chains to be put about his body. But Rustem said, Not so. I will meet thee again in the morning. And he turned and swam across the stream, so that Isfendiyar was amazed, for he knew that the steed and rider had been sore wounded. And he exulted in his heart, and he reviled Rustem with his lips. But in his soul he was filled with wonder at the pavlova, and his heart went out to him. Now when Zal and Rudabeh beheld the pavlova, and that he was wounded, they rent the air with their cries, for never yet was he returned unto them vanquished, neither had any man done hurt unto the elephant-limbed. And they wailed sore in their distress, and Rustem joined his lamentations unto theirs. Then they pondered how they should act, and Zal bethought him of the Simurgh that had been his nurse, and the feather that she had given him from her breast, that he might call upon her in the day of his need. So he brought it and cast it into the fire as she had commanded, and straightway a sound of rushing wings filled the air, and the sky was darkened, and the bird of God stood before Zal. And she spake and said unto him, O my son, what is come about that thou callest upon thy nurse that shielded thee? Then Zal told her all, and how Rustem was nigh to die of his wounds, and how Rakush too was sick unto death. Then the Simurgh said, Bring me before them. And when she had seen them, she passed her wings over their hurts, and forthwith they were whole. Then she spake unto Rustem, and questioned him wherefore he sought to combat the son of the Shah. And Rustem told her. Then she said, Seek yet again to turn Isfendiyar unto thyself. Yet if he listen not unto thy voice, I will reveal unto thee the secrets of fate. For it is written that whosoever sheddeth the blood of Isfendiyar, he also shall perish, and while he liveth he shall not know joy, and in the life to come he shall suffer pains. For if this fate dismay thee not, go forth with me, and I will teach thee this night how thou shalt close the mouth of thy enemy. Then the Simurgh showed unto Rustem the way he should follow, and Rustem rode after her. And they halted not until they come upon the sea-coast, and the Simurgh led him into a garden wherein grew a tamarisk, tall and strong, and the roots thereof were in the ground, but the branches pierced even unto the sky. Then the bird of God bade Rustem break from the tree a branch that was long and slender, and fashion it into an arrow. And she said, Only through his eyes can Isfendiyar be wounded. If, therefore, thou wouldst slay him, direct this arrow unto his forehead, and verily it shall not miss its aim. Then she exhorted him once more that he bring this matter to a good end, and she led him on the path of return unto Zabulistan. And when he was come there, she blessed him, and departed from him out of his sight. Now when the morning was come, Rustem came unto the camp of Isfendiyar, and he was mounted upon Rakush's steed. And Isfendiyar slumbered, for he thought that of a surety Rustem was perished of his wounds. Then Rustem lifted up his voice and cried, O man, eager to fight, wherefore slumberest thou when Rustem standeth before thee? Now Isfendiyar, when he heard his voice, and saw that it was truly Rustem that stood before him, was amazed, and he said unto his nobles, This is the deed of Zal the sorcerer. But unto Rustem he cried, Make ready for combat, for this day thou shalt not escape my might. May thy name perish from off the earth. Then Rustem spake, saying, I am not come forth to battle, but to treaty. Turn aside thine heart from evil, and root out this enmity. Make not, I pray thee, thy soul to be a dwelling place for Dievs, and suffer that I recall unto thee the deeds I have done for Iran, and the list thereof is long. And feast this day within my house, and let us ride forth together unto the courts of the Shah, that I may make my peace with Khosrau, thy father. But Isfendiyar was angered at these words, and he said, Wilt thou never cease from speaking? Thou exhortest me to quit the paths of God, for I do wrong when I obey not the voice of my father. Choose, therefore, betwixt chains and the combat. When Isfendiyar had so spoken, Rustem knew that his speech was of no avail. So he sighed and made ready for combat, and he took forth the arrow that was given to him of the submerged, and he let it fly towards his enemy, and it pierced the eye of the young king, and he fell upon the mane of his steed, and his blood reddened the field of battle. Then Rustem said unto him, The bitter harvest that thou hast sown hath borne fruit. Now Isfendiyar swooned in his agony and fell upon the ground, and there came out to him his brother and Bahman his son, and they wailed when they beheld how his plight was evil. But when he was come unto himself, he called after Rustem, and the Pehlavah got down from Rakush, and came unto him. He lay and knelt beside him, and Isfendiyar said, My life ebbeth unto the close, wherefore I would confide unto thee my wishes, and thou shalt behold how greatly I honour thee. For it is not that thou hast brought me unto death, but Khosrau my father, and verily the curse of the prophet shall fall upon his head. For thou wert but the instrument of fate. And listen now unto the words that I shall speak, for it is not given unto me to say many. I desire that thou take unto thyself Bahman my son, and that thou rear him in the land of Zabulistan, and that thou teach him the arts of war and the banquet. And when the hour of Khosrau shall become, I charge thee that thou put Bahman in his place, and aid him with thy counsels, that he may be upright in the sight of men. And Rustem sware unto him that it should be done at his desire. Then Isfendiyar made him ready to depart, and he spake words of comfort unto his son. And he sent greetings unto his mother and to his wives that were in Iran. And he made them say unto his father, that henceforward he need not fear him beside the throne, and he cursed the name of Khosrau. And he said that the Shah had done that which was worthy of his black soul. And he bade them speak before the throne and say, We shall meet again before the judge, and we shall speak and listen to his decree. Then he said unto Rustem, Thou hast done this deed by the arts of magic. And Rustem said, It is true, for thou wouldst not listen unto my voice, and I could not bend my spirit unto chains. And Isfendiyar said, I am not angered against thee. Thou hast done that thou couldst not alter, for it was written in the stars, and surely that which is written in the stars is accomplished. Then Rustem said, God is my witness that I strove to turn thee from thy resolve. And Isfendiyar said, It is known unto me. And when he had thus spoken, he sighed, and the sun of that king was set. And there was great lamentation for him in the army. And Rustem too bewailed the hero that was fallen, and he prayed God for his soul, and he said, May thine enemies reap that which they have sown. Then Rustem made ready for Isfendiyar a coffin of iron, and he caused it to be lined with silken stuffs, and he laid therein the body of the young king, and it was placed upon the back of a dromedary, and 40 others followed in its wake. And all the army of Isfendiyar came after them, clad in robes of mourning, and Bashatan, marched at the head of the train, and he led the horse of Isfendiyar, and its saddle was reversed, and its mane and its tail were shorn, and from its sides hung the armor of the young king. And weeping resounded through the ranks, and with sorrow did the army return unto Iran. But Rustem remained in Zabulistan, and he kept beside him Bahman, the son of Isfendiyar. Now when Gustasp learned the tidings of woe, he was brought down to the earth with sorrow, and remorse came upon him, and he strewed dust upon his head, and he humbled himself before God. And when men came before him and reproached him with that which he had done unto Isfendiyar, and he knew not how he should answer them. And Pashatan came in and saluted him not, but upbraided him with his vile deeds. And he said, Neither the Submerged nor Rustem nor Zal have made an end of Isfendiyar, but only thou, but thou alone, hast caused him to perish. And for the space of 1 year men ceased not to lament for Isfendiyar, and for many years were tears shed for that arrow, and men cried continually, The glory of Iran hath been laid low, and it is at the hands of her Shah that it hath been done. But Bahman grew up in the courts of Rustem, in the Pavlava, guarded him like to a son. End of section 21.
Section 22 of The Epic of Kings, Stories Retold from Firdusi. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Epic of Kings by Firdusi, translated by Helen Zimmern. The Death of Rustem. How shall a man escape from that which is written? How shall he flee from his destiny? There stood a slave in the house of Zal, and she was fair to see, so that the heart of the aged man went out to her. And there was born to her a son, goodly of mien, like unto Saum the hero, and Zal named him Shugdad, when he consulted the Mubids concerning him. And they searched the stars for his destiny, and they read therein that he would do much evil in the house of his father, and lay low the race of Saum, the son of Neriman. Now Zal, when he heard this, was sore afflicted, and he prayed unto God that he would avert this fate from his head. And he reared him tenderly, and when he was come unto man's estate, he sent him forth into Kabul. And the king of Kabul rejoiced in the sight of the hero, and he kept him beside him, and gave unto him his daughter to wife. Now the king of Kabul paid tribute unto Rustem, and it was a grievance to him to do so. And since he had taken Shugdad as his son, he deemed that it was fitting that he should be relieved of this burden. And he spake thereof unto Shugdad, and said how Rustem ceased not to demand it. And Shugdad said, This man is foolish. What mattereth it whether he be my brother or a stranger? Let us consider how we may ensnare him. So Shugdad and the king of Kabul passed a night pondering how they should bring Rustem unto destruction. And Shugdad said, Call together thy nobles unto a feast, and when thou shalt have drunk wine, speak insults unto me, and I will be angered, and ride forth unto Zabulistan, and make plaint of thee before Rustem. And assuredly he will come forth to avenge me, and while I am gone, cause a deep pit to be dug on the road that Rustem must pass. A pit that will swallow him and Rakush his steed, and line the sides thereof with sharp spears, and swords, and lances. And when it is done, cover it with earth, and let no man know thereof, nay, whisper it not even unto the moon. And the king said, Thy device is good. And he made a great feast, and called thereto his warriors. And he spake words of insult unto Shugdad, and he reproached him, and said that he was not of the race of Saum, but son unto a slave. And he said that Rudabeh would refuse to him the name of brother unto Rustem. And he spake lightly also of Rustem. Then Shugdad uprose as though he were angered, and vowed that he would ride unto Zabulistan and call forth Rustem to avenge the words that the king had spoken. Now when Shugdad was come unto the courts of Zal, and had told unto Rustem the words that the king of Kabul had spoken, he was beside himself with anger, and he said, I will slake my vengeance for this speech. Then he chose out an army and made ready to go into Kabul. But Shugdad said, Wherefore dost thou take forth so large an army? Surely Kabul shall be obedient when it but looketh upon thy face. Yet this army will cause the king to think that thou holdest him an enemy worthy of regard. Then Rustem said, That which thou sayest, it is wise. And he disbanded the army, and took with him but few men, and rode with them to Kabul. In the mean season the king of Kabul had done that which Shugdad counselled, and the pits that had been dug were concealed with cunning. Now, when Rustem came nigh to the city, Shugdad sent a messenger before him unto the king of Kabul, saying, Rustem cometh against thee, it behoveth thee to ask pardon for thy words. And the king came forth, and his tongue was filled with honey, but his heart was filled with poison. And he bowed himself in the dust before Rustem, and he asked his forgiveness for the words that he had spoken, and he said, Consider not the words of thy servant that he did speak when his head was troubled with wine. And Rustem forgave the king, and consented to be his guest. Then a great banquet was made. And while they feasted, the king told unto Rustem how his forests were filled with wild asses and with rams. And he invited him to hunt therein ere he should return unto Zabulistan. And these words were joy unto the ears of Rustem, and he consented unto the desires of the king. So the next day the king made ready a great hunt, and he led it unto the spot where the pits were hidden. And Shugdad ran beside the horse of Rustem, and showed unto him the path. But Rakush, when he smelt the soil that had been newly turned, reared him in air, and refused to go onwards. Then Rustem commanded him to go forward, but Rakush would not listen to his voice. And Rustem was angry when he beheld that Rakush was afraid, but Rakush sprang back yet again. Then Rustem took a whip and struck him, and before this day he had never raised his hand against his steed. So Rakush was grieved in his soul, and he did that which Rustem desired. And he sprang forward and fell into the pit, and the sharp spears entered his body and tore it. And they pierced also the flesh of Rustem, and steed and rider were impaled upon the irons that had been hidden by the king. But Rustem put forth all his strength, and raised himself. Yet when he had done it he was weary, and fell down beside the pit, and he swooned in his agony. Now when Rustem was come unto himself, he saw Shugdad, and he beheld in his face the joy felt of this evil man and this adventure. Then he knew that it was his brother that was his foe, so he said unto him, It is thou who hast done this deed. And Shugdad said, Thou hast caused many to perish by the sword. It is meet that thou shouldst perish by it thyself. Now while they yet spake, the king of Kabul came nigh unto the spot, and when he beheld Rustem, that weltered in his blood, he feigned a great sorrow, and he cried, O hero of renown, what thing hath befallen thee? I will send forth my physicians, that they heal thee. But Rustem said, O man of wile, the time of physicians is gone by, and there is none that can heal me, save only death, that cometh to all men in their turn. Then he said unto Shugdad, Give unto me my bow, and place before me 2 arrows, and refuse not unto me this last request, for I would have them beside me lest a lion go by ere I am dead, and devour me for his prey. And Shugdad gave unto Rustem his bow, But when he had done so he was afraid, and he ran unto a plane tree that stood near by. And the tree was old and hollow, and Shugdad hid himself in its trunk, but Rustem beheld him where he was hid. Though the dimness of death was come over his eyes, so he raised him from the ground in his agony. And he took his bow and bent it with force, and he shot an arrow and fixed Shugdad unto the tree wherein he was hid. And the aim was just, and pierced even unto the heart of this evil man, so that he died. And Rustem, when he saw it, smiled, and said, Thanks be unto God, the merciful, whom all my days I have sought to serve, that he hath granted unto me to avenge myself upon this wretch, while the life is yet in me, and ere 2 nights have passed over this vengeance. But when he had so spoken, the breath went out of him, and the hero who had borne high his head was vanished from this world. Now a warrior of the train of Rustem rode with all speed unto Zabulistan, and told unto Zal the tidings of sorrow, and Zal was dismayed thereat, and his grief was boundless, and he cried continually after his son, and he heaped curses upon Shugdad, that had uprooted this royal tree, and he said, Wherefore have I been suffered to see this day? Wherefore have I not died before Rustem, my son? Wherefore am I left alone to mourn his memory? Now, while he lamented thus, Pharamorz, the son of Rustem, gathered together an army to avenge his father. And he went into Kabul, and he laid low all the men he found therein, and he slew the king and all his house. And he changed the land into a desert. And when he had done so, he sought out the body of Rustem and of Rakush his steed. And he did unto them all honor, and they were borne in sorrow unto Zabulistan. And Zal caused a noble tomb to be built for Rustem, his son, and he laid him therein. And there was placed beside him also Rakush, the steed that had served him unto the end. And the wailing throughout the land because of the death of Rustem was such as the world hath not known the like. And Zal was crushed with sorrow, and Rudabeh was distraught with grief, and for many moons were no sounds save those of wailing heard in the courts of Seistan. And Rudabeh refused to take comfort, and she cried without ceasing, He is gone before us, but we shall follow. Let us rest our hopes in God. And she gave unto the poor of her treasures, and daily she prayed unto Ormuzd, saying, O thou who reignest above, to whom alone pertaineth honor and glory, purify the soul of Rustem from all sin, and grant that he rejoice in the fruits that he hath sown on earth, and give him a place beside thee. And now may the blessing of God rest upon all men. I have told unto them the epic of kings, and the epic of kings is come to a close, and the tale of their deeds is ended. End of Section 22. End of The Epic of Kings by Firdusi, translated by Helen Zimmern.